I need you to, the blood. I'm gonna throw it in the water. They never find me. You guys don't have to come with me if you don't want to. I'm not too bad, man. I just need Christ to be down there today. If it's in the team secret, but they will never find it.
Knoxville, TN Central High School. At football games, the stadium is lit up, and the mood is high as everyone comes to cheer on their home team, the Bobcats. People in the crowd are entertained and pumped up by the marching band and cheerleaders. Some people say that football is the center of the school, and that town spirit is always high when the team plays. There was a new cheerleader on the team in the fall of 2014. In that year, Emma Walker, who was 14 years old, was the only freshman to make the team. Emma was passionate about cheerleading and took it very seriously. She was described as fun, lively, and passionate, and her smile was contagious. She loved being in that place so much. She was kind, caring, and smart, and she wanted to become a neonatal nurse one day to help babies who were born sick or early. Emma caught the eye of Riley Gall, a wide receiver for Central High, one night while she was cheering. When he saw her from the sidelines, he fell in love with her right away. Riley, who was 2 years older than her, was also a good student who was liked by many. He went to a community church and loved video games. His friends said he was funny and not at all like the stereotypical jock type. Riley was already seeing someone at the time, but he quickly broke up with her to start dating Emma. The football star and cheerleader became the most popular couple in high school. Riley got along well with Emma's family. They said he was polite, well-behaved, and likable, like the boy next door. But they quickly changed their minds when they learned Riley was going to keep his promise to take Emma to the senior prom, and then his ex-girlfriend to the junior prom. Friends and family of Emma didn't like this, and they were worried that he wasn't putting their daughter first. Emma didn't care though. There were a lot of pictures of the young couple on her social media account. They would post silly selfies and pictures of them together. Friends of Emma, on the other hand, said it was hard to get to know Riley. They thought it was because he was shy and quiet. But Emma's friends said that as time went on, they stopped defending his behavior and began to worry about it more. A lot of Emma's friends said it was clear that Riley didn't want her to hang out with anyone other than him. He turned possessive, controlling, and angry. Emma told her friends they didn't need to worry when they told her they were worried. Emma's parents took away her phone to try to make things better. On the other hand, Riley gave Emma an iPod Touch, which let her text him through Wi-Fi without her parents knowing. Emma and Riley's relationship got worse and more unstable over the next 2 years, as they went on and off many times. The young couple would often get into nasty fights, and each breakup was worse than the last. Riley called her all the time and sent her message after message. He was always bothering her and would wait outside her job for hours until she was done. He told her once, "You're dead to me. I'll read the death notice." However, soon after a mean message, someone would say, "Sorry. I'm sorry for how I behave." He would say, "I love you more than words can say." Mark and Jill, Emma's parents, said they tried many times to get her to end the relationship. He could make her feel alone and like she was the only one, Jill said. They all got angry with each other the more they told Emma to end the relationship. Everyone was worried that Emma and Riley's relationship would stay the same by the fall of 2016. After high school, Riley was a freshman at Maryville College, which is about 30 minutes away. Emma, who was 16, was in her junior year of high school. To get their daughter to behave better, Emma's parents decided to ground her around Halloween of that year. They wouldn't let her leave the house except for school or cheerleading. They started keeping an eye on her everywhere she went and everyone she talked to. To their surprise, it seemed to have the good effect they were hoping for. Mark said she was back to being herself. She would hang out with her family, make friends, and eat dinner with everyone. She even texted her friend Keegan to tell him that she and Riley were no longer together because she had seen pictures of him with other college girls. The kids and their friends let out a sigh of relief. Riley didn't handle the breakup well, as everyone thought she would. Fear not, Emma was let out to go to a party at a friend's house on November 18, 2016. Zach, her friend, came over around 11:30 p.m. Emma greeted him and pulled him inside right away. She told him she had been getting strange text messages from an unknown number. It said, "Go outside by yourself if you don't want to see a loved one get hurt. Take your keys and go to your car. They will get hurt if you don't follow through." Emma thought one of Riley's friends was pulling a weird joke on her, so she texted back and said she would call the police. That didn't stop anything, and the messages got scarier. Emma then got a text message telling her that Riley had been left outside the house. When Emma and Zach ran outside, they saw someone lying on their back in a ditch close to the house, and it was Riley. By the time they got to him, he was holding his head and looked lost. He said he was taken hostage and had no idea how he got there. Emma told Riley that they were no longer together and that he should leave her alone while she was crying. Riley felt sad and walked off down the street by herself. Then he called his friend Noah and told him that someone had taken him. Noah didn't believe a word of it. Emma stayed with her friends that night because she felt uneasy. After 10 a.m. the next day, she drove home with her friend Haley, who lived close to the Walkers. They saw a man dressed in all black walking around Emma's street while they were driving. Emma drove back home after dropping Haley off at her house. Emma went inside to get ready to meet her mom Jill. But soon, the unknown man came back and began ringing the doorbell and banging on the door. Emma was scared and sent her friends texts. She also sent a message to Riley, the one person she thought would help her. She told him, "I hate you, but I need you now." He answered that he was on his way to help her right away. The mystery man was gone when Riley got there. Hasley, Emma's friend, knew who he was. She said there was no question, and it was Riley. She was even more sure of this when she saw his car parked nearby. She even texted Riley and asked him what he was doing hanging out near Emma's house, but Riley said it wasn't him. Jill Walker went back to her house to find Emma. In the front yard, she saw her daughter and Riley talking. It was against the rules for him to be near the house, so Jill told him to leave. Emma looked scared and was thinking it might have been a thief. It wasn't a coincidence for Jill, she wasn't sure. Emma told Jill that she was sure Riley had nothing to do with what had happened. Following this event, Jill and Mark were very worried about their daughter. They took her to work on Sunday morning for her shift. They waited for her to finish, then took her home with them. On November 20th, 2016 Sunday night, everything in the Walker home seemed quiet and calm. Emma called her friend Keegan to talk about a due assignment. Around midnight, she went to bed. Riley, who was back in Maryville, asked to borrow his roommate's phone a little after midnight. He called Emma on this phone. Riley said that Emma had told him on this call that she didn't want to get back together with him, and the call ended suddenly. After that, Riley texted her a lot, called her about 40 times, and left a lot of voicemails. Emma did not answer, and Riley stopped trying to get in touch with her in the end. During the night, Emma's dad woke up because he thought he heard someone in the house and the door slamming twice. He looked around and into Emma and Evan's bedrooms, but none of the things he saw or heard seemed to be moving. He went back to sleep because he thought the sounds were just in his head. Jill went into Emma's room around 6 a.m. to wake her up for school. Emma didn't answer when Jill called her name. Emma didn't move when she touched her leg. Jill said she knew she had to call an ambulance when she saw Emma's face. She was very pale, and her lips were blue. Jill felt for a pulse but couldn't find one.
Where is your emergency?
I'm Jill Walker!
What's going on there?
I just tried to wake up my daughter for school, and she has no pulse.
How old is she?
She's 16.
You said that she's non-responsive?
Yeah.
Emma Walker, who was 16, had died. The police quickly got to the Walker house. A small amount of blood was found near Emma's mouth, and it looked like she might have thrown up, possibly after some food. The police did find a small hole in the wall of Emma's bedroom, though, which led them to another place. There was a bullet hole there, Emma was asleep when she was shot in the head through the wall. Outside the house, 2 shell casings were found. The police had to figure out where the second shot came from. Police eventually found the second bullet hole, which was about the same height as the first one, as they walked around the outside of the house. This shot was also fired into Emma's room, right next to her bed. Between 2:30 a.m. and 3 a.m., shots were fired from as little as 4 or 5 feet away from Emma's bedroom window. The first bullet hit her behind the left ear and killed her right away. The second bullet got stuck in her pillow and killed her too. The person who shot Emma knew how the room was set up and where she would be lying. Hundreds of tributes were sent in, and many of them were from Emma's ex-boyfriend Riley. At Central High School, there was a candlelight vigil, and at that week's football game, her fellow cheerleaders released balloons in her honor. The same name kept coming up over and over again when police talked to Emma Walker's family and friends. Go Riley Gall. After Emma died, some of Riley's friends started to worry about his health. They told the police a secret Riley had told them the day after he said he was taken hostage. Riley said he was scared for his life and had taken his grandfather's gun to keep himself safe. After that, he showed his friend Alex the gun. Police were told by another friend, Noah, that Riley had asked him how to clean fingerprints off of a gun, saying that he was asking for his roommate. The day before Emma was shot, Riley's grandfather said that this gun had been stolen. As Riley insisted he had nothing to do with Emma's death, he asked Noah and Alex to help him get rid of the gun in the Tennessee River. He was afraid that it might be used against him in some way. Riley was brought in by police to be questioned.
I just feel like I'm being badgered with questions and I don't I'm not trying to badger you with questions. You understand? I'm trying to help you because if I can make solid your timeline and rule out the fact that Alex and Noah and all these guys are saying all this stuff, then the better off you're going to be. I understand, but how would that rule out if I'm not in person? That would show nothing on right. But they're saying that there are text messages and phone calls to and from that's going to help establish your timeline. Text messages. Mm-hmm. What I could care less about you thinking I have a gun or anything, but I hope to God I'm not a suspect in her death. Is that so you want? I hope you don't think that. Because I wouldn't hurt that girl for, I would hurt myself if I let her mess up that.
Police talked to him for hours that day. The more Riley talked, the more holes appeared in his story. He was elusive and detached, and the way he spoke about Emma did not match with his previous words. He referred to Emma as the girl and wouldn't use her name. Detectives said Riley was totally emotionless and disconnected, and his whole story seemed very rehearsed.
The girl, she texted me.
Which girl?
The one that passed away.
Okay. What's her name?
Emma.
Analysts of his cell phone showed that he was lying when he said he was in Maryville when Emma was killed. His phone showed that he was on the freeway going back to Knoxville from Maryville just after midnight. Also, Riley was close to Emma's house around 3:45 a.m., and she had been killed between 2:30 and 3 a.m. The police asked him about the gun and the information they had gotten from Alex and Noah, but Riley said that none of these talks ever took place.
If I told you someone told us that they saw you with a gun, what would you think about that?
I would wonder who said that and where they saw me with the gun.
Alex McCarty said that you showed him a handgun. Where is the gun?
I do not know.
You understand, though, for us, Alex has no reason to lie about something like that.
Yeah, but I'm telling you, I don't know where it's at.
He said that you showed him the gun, you told him that you had it, and you told him that you got it from your granddad.
Don't have the gun. I don't know why he would say that.
Do you ever remember having a conversation with Noah about getting fingerprints off a gun? How do you get fingerprints off a gun?
No.
At this point, Riley was the only person the police thought might have done it, but they didn't have enough evidence to arrest him. Before he left the station, Riley texted Noah and Alex and told them not to talk to the police again. He also told them to delete the messages from him. As Riley looked on, Alex and Noah were still talking to police. They had been since they learned Emma had died. They wanted to help with the investigation and knew they could get the murder weapon back. At first, the The police were hesitant to help and warned them about the safety risks, but the two were adamant and determined. Alex said, "I wasn't afraid for my safety. I was afraid that maybe justice wouldn't have been done if we did the wrong thing." He came up with a plan with the police to catch Riley lying. Riley asked Noah and Alex to help him get rid of his grandfather's gun in the Tennessee River, and they agreed. The police were supposed to be nearby and ready to arrest Riley as soon as he pulled out the gun. The boys would text the police a secret word that told them to come over. Noah and Alex were given wires and body cameras by the police. An in-depth undercover investigation then began.
But I'm trusting you guys, like, with my life, because, I mean, this is 70 years in jail if I get convicted of something I didn't do. Man, are you busy right now? Can you guys do anything? Because I need you to, the blood. I'm going to throw it in the water. They'll never find me. We can go on that, the smaller ledge that really looks out of the water. You know what I'm talking about. Under? Yeah. And if I throw it with enough force, I know it's terrifying. I know this. You guys don't have to come with me if you don't want to. I mean, I'm not too bad, man. I just need to Christ, dude. I understand. If it's in the fence here, but they will never find it. I know that much. And how would I know it wasn't my grandfather's gun? His magazine had 5 shots in total when I first got it. Still has 5 shots in it. If I actually gave him that gun, that's like, yeah, maybe it's 50-50. It may give them reason to say, okay, the fingerprints on this gun and this bullet don't match, cool. But at the same time, they could have never had fingerprints in the first place and be like, oh, and it's just this bullet. This walks in this stupid comment. This bullet fits in this magazine fits in this gun.
After this was filmed, the three made their way to the river with the gun that Riley had been hiding at his stepfather's house.
Success? Bag of trash. I just threw it in there. I don't know what's in there. I just want to throw it and be done.
Oh my God. What? This is a real gun.
When they got there, Riley took out the gun ready to throw it in. But thanks to Noah and Alex, the police were waiting.
Everybody put your hands out of the vehicle now!
What the? Oh my God.
What the? Leave your hands out of the vehicle! Step out of the vehicle!
It took 48 hours after Emma was found for her killer to be tied up. Megan Walker's murder was charged against Riley Gould. Police found black clothes and shoes in Riley's car trunk. The only thing they could be sure of was that Riley had been trying to get into Emma's house a few days before.
Opening arguments began today in the first-degree murder trial.
Our Ann Brock was there today. A lot of emotion surrounding this case. Some tough talk, though, as well about evidence and patterns of behavior. You picked it all up, Ann.
Absolutely. Emotional, of course, as a mother had to be the first witness to take the stand and describe so much surrounding her daughter's death. But both sides in this case really dug in, trying to show behavior patterns. The defense trying to bring out details of how this teenage girl you see pictured behind me was defying her parents, even when they didn't want her around her boyfriend, trying to show that while he was what the defense attorney even called obsessive in his behavior, he did not intend to harm her. Now, prosecutors are trying to show that Gall was stalking his former girlfriend, even planning to harm her. They're pointing to evidence from the gun they say Riley stole from his grandfather to having a bag full of black clothes and gloves in a garbage bag. Police collecting these things when they arrested him.
A year and a half later, Riley Gall's trial began, and he pleaded not guilty. It was his choice not to testify, and his lawyers did not call any witnesses. His team's plan wasn't to say that he didn't fire the bullets. Instead, they said that it was an accident that the bullets killed her. They said that he shot near Emma to scare her, but he didn't know that the bullets would go through the wall. He wanted her to tell him everything, and then they could get back together. Riley was Emma's hero, according to his lawyer. This was all part of his stupid plan to act like he was saving her, but it all went horribly wrong when he killed her. The defense asked the jury that if they had to find him guilty of anything, it would be reckless homicide, which had a sentence that was much lighter.
So, submit to you that after you've heard all the evidence, and as I told you in the very beginning of this trial, you will hear some bizarre, reckless conduct regarding my teenage client. that everything that they say about premeditation to kill Emma Walker is consistent with him trying to scare her. Because if you scare her, maybe she'll come have contact with you, and therefore you can try to rehabilitate your relationship. I'm not saying it's logical. Do not think that I submit to you that there's any logic in any of this, because it's not logical. None of it is. But it is consistent with the facts as we know them from the witnesses. It's consistent with the facts as we know them from the 18th. And it's consistent with how Emma reached out to him on the 19th. Asked him to rescue her.
But the prosecution said everything pointed to this being an intentional act, and it stemmed from his anger at her not wanting to get back together with him.
Well, she was their light. And they're blessed that they got 16 years with her. And they can look at it that way and live the rest of their lives knowing at least we got that. But they'll always be muted. You could sense that from them when they took the stand. Each one of them has suffered a loss at the hands of him. This guy, his personal responsibility, his actions, everything that he did, caused them to suffer, and every person in here who she touched in their lives will never be the same again because of him and his selfishness and his lies and his possessiveness and his manipulation and his obsessiveness of Emma Walker. She's creating this fictitious, this bogus kidnapping story to upset her. When you think about the fact that 3 o'clock in the morning, dressed in black, he's standing outside a 16-year-old girl's bedroom, and you think of all the places he could have placed that shot. All the things that he could have done. Shoot up into the air, shoot in through the window, anywhere, but where you shot. Shot placement shows you an intent to kill.
Mr. Gilder, has the jury reached a verdict?
Yes, sir, we have.
Will you please stand? Mr. Gall, please stand. Mr. Gilder, in count 1, the first defined offense charging the defendant with first-degree murder, did the jury reach a verdict?
Yes, we did.
What is your verdict?
Guilty.
And for the lesser included offense of stalking, did the jury reach a verdict?
We did.
What is your verdict?
Guilty.
The jury found William Riley Gall guilty of the first-degree murder of Emma Walker, as well as stalking, theft, reckless endangerment, and being in possession of a firearm during a dangerous felony.
I know that nothing I can do will ever bring Emma back or alleviate the pain that I caused. But what I can do is tell the truth of what happened that night. My intentions were not, and never have been, to cause Emma any physical harm. At times, I was a terrible boyfriend. I caused her emotional and psychological pain during the 2 years that we were together. But I never once even imagined to cause her any physical harm. My intentions that night were never to harm Emma, let alone take her life. I wanted to scare her, to frighten her so bad that she would have no choice but to talk to me again, to confide in me. I would be there to comfort her and to win her back.
If you are found guilty of first-degree murder in Tennessee, you will automatically get life in prison. Riley was given a life sentence in prison, with at least 51 years to go before he could even be considered for parole. He'll be 70 years old. In May 2021, it was reported that Riley Gall was trying to get out of jail because there wasn't enough evidence. If he wasn't found not guilty, he wanted a new trial. On June 4, 2021, a motion hearing was planned, but his request was turned down. Riley's lawyer said that he is going to appeal the decision. Emma should have finished high school in May 2018. The person who would have been sitting in that chair had her cap and gown laid out in front of them. Since Emma died, her family and friends have worked hard to carry on her memory. An award at her high school is named after her. Jill said that Emma's love of animals and her desire to become a neonatal nurse were very important parts of who she was. Since then, a dog park and a room for babies in the neonatal intensive care unit at East Tennessee Children's Hospital have been named after her. Jill told Emma's friends and family that she hopes they remember her by being kind to others all the time. Share your opinion with us in the comments and subscribe to the channel for more.
This is the photo the St. Johns County Sheriff's Office wants you to take a close look at. Tristan Bailey is missing. Deputies say she was last seen during the overnight hours at the Amenities Center in the Durbin Crossing subdivision. But the search is now expanding to a nearby park, and that is where Brianna Ray Turner joins us live with the latest. Brianna?
This really is a strange case. A cruel killer stabbed his victim more than 100 times, then took her body and hid it in the woods before going home and acting like nothing happened. In what way did his mother play a part in what he did? Welcome to Fear Files, a show where we talk about and break down the world's strangest, scariest, and most puzzling cases. Before we begin, we want to say that our thoughts and prayers are with the family who was hurt by this 14-year-old boy's crazy behavior. Welcome to Jacksonville, Florida, the largest city in the Sunshine State. Meet 13-year-old Tristan Bailey, a loyal friend, a gifted athlete, and a lover of Starbucks. She went to Patriot Oaks Academy in St. Johns, Florida. Along with other gifted teens, she was a dedicated cheerleader and loved it so much that she decided to continue doing it throughout high school and college. Everything changed one morning when the little girl was found missing by her parents.
This is the photo the St. Johns County Sheriff's Office wants you to take a close look at. Tristan Bailey is missing. Deputies say she was last seen during the overnight hours at the Amenities Center in the Durbin Crossing subdivision. But the search is now expanding to a nearby park, and that is where Brianna Ray Turner joins us live with the latest. Brianna?
Yeah, Jeff, I'm here at Veterans Park in St. Johns County. Now, I just want to go quickly over here because the search group, they're volunteering. These are community members from the Durbin community. Now, take a look if you could zoom in a little bit more, DJ. They're about to start their search right now. They're trying to find Tristan Bailey, 13-year-old girl who was reported missing by her family this morning at 1 a.m. at the Durbin Amenity Center. Now, again, so many families out here. I talked with one family who says their kids went to school with Bailey, and they still can't believe something like this happened. They've been living here for about 12 years now, and they said never has a child been missing. The St. Johns County Sheriff's Office says Bailey was last wearing a white cheerleading skirt and a dark-colored shirt. So if you have any information about the current whereabouts or have seen Bailey, please contact your nearest local law enforcement agency.
Tristan's parents were already up and making breakfast on Mother's Day, May 9th. Their lives were going well, and they had no reason to think that their daughter Tristan had been hurt. Around 10 a.m., Mrs. Bailey went to wake up her daughter, but was shocked to find that she wasn't in her room. They became very worried, and the mom called the police to say that her daughter was missing. The neighborhood where they lived had never been a target of crime. It was called Durbin Crossing, and it reminded people of a time when kids played outside and laughter could be heard through the streets. The police and crime in this neighborhood were known to be very low, and there were definitely no kidnappings or murders. Because they were so close, everyone knew each other and talked to each other like friends. All of the pictures showed people who looked like they were from an upper-middle-class neighborhood and were very polite. Tristan's mom said her daughter was missing, and that's when the whole community helped. Later, the investigators said that they were impressed by how much the community helped them. People put up flyers and did everything they could to help find the girl. Finally, Tristan Bailey was seen walking down the street around 1:15 a.m. on one security camera. It was too late for her parents to let her go outside, so she must have sneaked out. She and her friend Aidan Fucci, 14, were walking through the parking lot of an amenity center in the area. Through the neighborhood and into a wooded area of town, They were caught on several security cameras. Tristan and Fuchi's classmate, whose name isn't given, likely because they are a minor, told St. John's police that the two had been hanging out at his house and left together around 1 a.m. The two looked like they wanted to go for a walk at night. For a while, nothing happened, or at least the cameras didn't see anything. A third of an hour later, though, police saw Aiden walking out of the woods by himself, with no sign of Tristan. The police went straight to Aiden's house after seeing the video and asked him to show them the route he and Tristan had taken. They then took him to the station to be questioned. He pulled out his phone, took several pictures of himself, and wrote on the back of each one, "Hey guys, has anyone seen Tristan lately?"
We're having fun in a f***ing cop car.
Yep. Tristan.
What's up, guys? Yep. Tristan, if you f***ing walk out the damn...
When you see this in a month...
Fuchi's cousin said that he often went to her house more than once a week. It was Thursday, May 1st, when the female minor told police that she had last seen her cousin. She did say, though, that she had talked to Fuchi after he sent the picture of himself from the patrol car's back seat. This picture was quickly sent to all of their classmates. Fuchi once told her that he thought he might go to jail someday, but then he changed his mind. When asked if she had ever seen him act in a strange way, she remembered that Fuchi had said that. Reports say Fuchi started crying and hitting the back of the seat while still in the car, saying, "I'm going to get arrested for this bullshit." He seemed to want to look like he wasn't guilty. But when the police searched his bedroom, they found clothes that had the girl's blood on them. Besides that, they found scary, satanic drawings in his room, such as pictures of girls with X's on their genitalia and their limbs cut off, which was a really horrible sight. Fuchi told detectives that he walked around alone for a while and didn't stop until he got home between 3 and 3:30 a.m. He said that he needed to clear his head, which is why it took him so long to get home. Her body was finally found 16 hours after the search began.
Year-old girl out of St. Johns County ends in tragedy. Police believe they have found the body of Tristan Bailey Sunday evening after she was reported missing that morning.
Our Renata DiGregorio live now at Bailey's school. Renata.
Lou, Keitha, we are at Patriot Oaks Academy, and this is where there will be extra grief counselors at the school today because this is where Tristan Bailey went to school. Now, the sheriff's department says her body was found in the immediate area of Veterans Park. That's where they called the press conference just yesterday. A volunteer search group had just gathered at the Durbin Crossing North Amenity Center, which is where Bailey was last seen on midnight Saturday. But before they began their search, the police called that press conference at the Veterans Park. The Amenity Center posted on Twitter that it will be closed until further notice. The sheriff's department says they are still investigating, and one of Bailey's close friends and cheer teammates says she talked with Bailey on Snapchat around 10 p.m. Saturday, and that was just hours before she was last seen.
It makes me really sad that the last time I saw her was at cheer.
And again, there will be grief counselors at Bailey's school here, Patriot Oaks Academy. A lot of people reaching out online, even finding Bailey on TikTok, Instagram, and on social media, and saying that they really hope that justice is served. Of course,
Someone in the neighborhood who was jogging that day chose a different path. He saw the girl's body in a bushy area near the bottom of Settlestone Drive, next to the lake, while he was working out. As soon as he saw the horrible picture, he called the police. The police came quickly and found that the girl had been stabbed several times after starting their investigation. The police took the body in and called the parents to find out if it was their daughter. Sadly, it was. Since she was fully dressed, there was no reason to think she had been raped or anything like that. Tell me how the girl's body with many stab wounds got to that spot. That is not cool to do to a 13-year-old girl. People in the area quickly found out what was going on and stepped in to help. They started to look at video from the killer's personal security system and worked closely with the police to find out who did it. Since her body was found near a lake, police spent days searching the water for what they thought was the murder weapon. Aiden, who was the main suspect, was sent to St. John to be held as a juvenile. His first court appearance was done through Zoom, and video of it was made public online. The judge thought there was a good reason to hold the boy until the end of May, when the case would continue. Once the boy was in custody, an investigator who had worked in the area for more than 10 years said they were confident in the case and would bring it to the fullest extent of the law. This showed that they thought they had the right suspect in Tristan's horrible stabbing. The investigators were sure of it. People used social media to say how sorry they were and how disgusted they were with Aiden. People shared their own thoughts on sites like Instagram, TikTok, and Twitter. But for some strange reason, some people stood by Aiden and said he deserved to be free. How could anyone back someone who kills? It was impossible to understand. Some people wrote captions that made it seem like doing something so horrible was a way to get famous, connecting this horrible crime with the desire to be famous online. Also, there were false rumors going around online that Aiden's friends were involved and that Tristan had been abused before. This group of students went to a school ranked in the top 5% in the whole country. They came from good families and got a great education. Aiden had only moved there with his mom 6 months before the murder, though. He might not have had the same morals and values as her, even though they went to the same school and lived in the same neighborhood. At least one police officer who was interviewed said that Aiden was nothing but a cold-blooded killer. It was important to remember, though, that Aiden was thought to be innocent until proven guilty. Aiden was taken out of juvenile detention and arrested as an adult until his trial later in the investigation, even though he was still a minor. When asked if he would be sharing a cell with adults, one officer made it clear that he would not be at that time, even though he would be tried as an adult. He would be kept away from other prisoners. At this point, Aiden was being charged with first-degree murder, which shows how serious the case was. People thought that if he was found guilty, he would spend the rest of his life in prison without the chance of parole. Some people thought this was cruel, even though his crime was so bad that it could not be forgiven. Some people might have asked why the police were being so mean. Tristan Bailey had been stabbed an amazing 114 times, which showed that the person who did it meant to kill him. Divers finally found the murder weapon in the lake. It was a normal folding button knife, and part of the blade was stuck in one of the girl's skull wounds. Aiden was thought to have stopped after 114 stabs because the knife broke. It was thought that Tristan fought for her life until the very end, as 49 of the wounds were defensive. She wasn't ready to give up. The police had gathered a huge amount of evidence against Aiden at this point, and they were very sure he was guilty, even though he hadn't admitted to the crime. Some of his friends claimed that he had told them for a long time that he wanted to kill someone, which was more evidence against him. His girlfriend's friend said he was numb and emotionless, which are common traits of serial killers. This made people even more suspicious of him. The victim's family told the media more than once how sad they were and how they hoped other girls could learn from Tristan's story and stay safe. Also, they stressed that parents should keep a close eye on their kids, especially if they were acting in a strange way. But they got death threats, most likely from teens who didn't understand how serious the situation was or thought it was funny. The police told the family that these kinds of threats would have legal consequences to protect them. During the investigation, Aiden's mother was arrested on a felony charge of tampering with evidence. This was a sudden turn of events. She is said to have washed his jeans in the sink to get rid of the blood after her son was booked. The police learned this from footage from their home security cameras. Someone else who was there at the time of the washing told her not to do it, but she did it anyway. People were wondering why she was so worried before Tristan's body was even found, because she looked like she was stressed. In the end, information from one of Aiden's interviews at the sheriff's station was made public. Aiden said in the interview that he and Tristan had gone for a walk in the woods, but they got into a fight when she grabbed his penis. He said he hit her head on the ground and left her there. Aiden first said he was wearing jeans that night, but his mom stepped in and said he was wearing khakis. She probably lied to protect her son by revealing an important fact. The crime scene, on the other hand, showed that Tristan's body was found with her bloody belongings, such as her cell phone, $20, and a cotton candy vape. Aiden's story is also called into question by the writing on her ankles, karma on her left ankle, and a smiley face on her right. This made people wonder if there might have been someone else involved. Many people didn't seem to believe Aiden when he said what he did, and some thought that his parents might have known more than they told him. There was no truth to this at all. His girlfriend said that he carried knives around with him and even gave them names which matched the knife that was found in the lake. Aiden had to share a detention room with adults in the end. The prosecution announced a surprise witness from the county jail. This witness is thought to have more information about the murder because Aiden may have told them or other prisoners something. The prosecutor said that there were 250 witnesses against Aiden who was innocent or guilty. The Bailey family was counting on these witnesses to help their case. Aiden Fucci, who is 14 years old and is accused of murder, showed up via video feed from the Duval County Jail before his regular pretrial hearing. He was wearing an orange jumpsuit and looked confused. He was taken into a room with a phone for the court case. He looked scared and lost. He looked like he had no idea where he was.
I won't let you demons. I won't let you demons take my soul. You demons will take my soul away. I won't let you demons steal my soul. I don't know what's going on. I see him first. What's going on? What you got going on? Why am I here? I just want to talk to my mom and dad. What's going on? What's going on? What's going on? But I used to. But why am I all in this change?
The phone receiver was taken off the wall by a guard who then gave it to Fucci. As he held the phone to his ear, he flipped back his long hair and continued to look lost. Did the time he spent in jail change him? After that, he began to rock back and forth in his chair while looking around the room and muttering. People could hear him talking about demons and how they were going to take his soul. He was sure they would. It didn't end there, though. Then he asked, "What's going on?" And then, "Why am I here?" in a sad voice. "I only need to talk to my parents." What is going on? Aiden Fucci's feed ended in the end, and like most defendants, his lawyer filed a speedy trial waiver. The new date for the case is October 28th. A forensic psychologist, who was not involved with the case, said that after seeing the video of Fucci's behavior in court, he wouldn't be surprised if the teen was given a mental competency evaluation. The doctor noticed that Fucci seemed lost and confused, which made it hard to tell if he was pretending to have a mental disorder or actually had one. From his point of view, it seemed real based on the way he behaved and what we understood about him. D'Orencio also said that Fucci's past actions were likely to have something to do with the case. Gene Nichols, an attorney who is also not involved in the case, said that a competency evaluation wouldn't be out of the ordinary in Fucci's case, but it could make the case last longer. Before going to court, young people are often evaluated, and it can take months before a decision is made. The judge has not yet ordered a mental competency evaluation for Fucci, and investigators have not yet found out if he has a mental disorder. Fucci's mother, Crystal Smith, was supposed to have a separate hearing, but it was also pushed back to October 28th. On October 28th, something else happened. Aiden Fucci didn't show up to court. but he did make a few quick appearances before his new pretrial date, which was set for February 2nd. Even though the case is still being looked into, after seeing all the evidence, Aiden is most likely going to get life in prison, but only time will tell. What do you think his sentence should be? Share your opinion with us in the comments and subscribe to the channel for more.
Police, I think I need to report a break-in and a murder. My wife is on the floor, bloody, stiff, not moving. I have my daughter with me. I want to take her to my...
We're back in Las Vegas for this episode. This is the city that never sleeps, with things going on all day and night. Over 500,000 people live there, and Shauna Ann Castleton was one of them. A Mormon family raised Shauna in Salt Lake City. When she was 28, she made the big decision to move to Las Vegas, which was 500 miles away. She sold makeup at Saks off Fifth Avenue and Neiman Marcus for a while. But Shauna loved the exciting and flashy nightlife in Las Vegas. She thought this place would give her a lot of chances. She first worked as a cocktail waitress at the Fiesta. Then she moved on to the Palms Hotel Casino, which is one of the most famous and well-known casinos in the area. She got used to her new job quickly. Her co-workers became like family to her and her customers loved her. Shauna loved her job so much. People who knew her said she always laughed and enjoyed the present. According to her friends, she was pure, she had a free spirit and always saw the bright side of things no matter what. She met George Tiafe at the Palms in 2002. George went there a lot, and he said Shauna stood out right away because of how hard she worked. She was always moving around and making sure her guests were happy. George did really well in sports and was homecoming king at his school. His family said he was funny, charming, and charismatic. He was always ready to help people who needed it. He was trained at West Point, which is another name for the U.S. Military Academy. Now he was a firefighter. Instant attraction made them fall in love right away, and they couldn't stay apart. George told his sisters right away that Shauna was his whole world. A year later, they had a little girl they named Madison, who made their world a little bigger. Friends said that George loved and cared for his new family very much, and Shauna was crazy about her little girl. After a few years, George and Shauna got married in Hawaii on a beautiful beach. Things stayed the same for 2 more years. That is, until George had a huge setback with his money. He lost a lot of money in the housing market crash, placing Shauna as the family's main source of income. The stress of having to pay their bills began to affect the couple. In the end, Shauna told other people that George had become very angry and jealous, and it didn't take long for his behavior to get worse and more controlling. When George told her she looked like she was on her way to work one day, she said it made her feel even worse because her little girl had heard it. She told her friends that things got even stranger when he made friends with a homeless man and hired him to do odd jobs in the garden and house. She said that the man was creepy and that being around him made her feel very uneasy. As the relationship got worse, George's sudden and mean personality change and the strain on their finances led Shauna to leave him and move into her own townhouse apartment in Summerlin. They began to share custody of Maddie and went to see a marriage counselor. Shauna was heartbroken that the relationship had ended. She hoped that they could get back together someday, but she also knew that they were likely to get a divorce. George got a text from her that said, "I don't think there's any going back once we live apart." George was also upset, and he told people that he didn't want to go through the problems that come with getting a divorce. Now that they had been living apart for a while, Shauna was getting used to their new rhythm. She still worked long hours and was always busy, but she didn't mind because she loved her job. She got home from a late shift to find that someone had broken into her apartment and made a mess of everything. A lot of valuable and sentimental things had been stolen, including her engagement ring. Everyone thought it was strange that her bikini bottoms were taken. The person who broke in also left some boxer briefs inside. That event scared and tensed Shauna, but she tried her best to forget about it. Shauna set her alarm and left work like she always did, just after 3 a.m. Her apartment was about a 30-minute drive away, and she got home around 3:30 a.m. She parked outside and used the door in her garage to get inside. George had just finished a long shift at the fire station and went to pick up Maddie, 8, from her grandmother's house. They both drove to Shauna's house to get some of Maddie's things. When they went into Shauna's house, it was completely messed up. There was a dead body of Shauna Tiafe on the floor.
911 emergency. Police, I think I need to report a break-in and a murder. My wife is on the floor, bloody, stiff, not moving. I have my daughter with me. I want to take her to my mom's house.
Well, stay right there a minute, okay?
Okay.
Do you know what the address is? And you don't live there, correct?
No, my wife and I live in separate places.
Okay. When's the last time you saw her? All right, you're good. Take a deep breath.
I'm a fireman. I was at work yesterday, so I saw her about 36 hours ago, I guess.
Okay,
I'm not sure.
Okay.
A day and a half ago, I'm thinking something like that.
Okay. How old's your daughter?
She's 8.
And she's with you, or where's she at?
She's right here with me.
Okay, what's your name, sir?
My name is George TFA.
Okay, do you see anything suspicious around her? Any weapons, any knives, guns?
No, I had to get my daughter out of there. We came over and the garage door was open and it's never open. And so we went in to grab some stuff for my daughter. My wife sleeps during the day because she works at night.
Right.
And she was on the floor when we walked in the door.
Where are you at right now?
I'm at the garage right now.
Okay, we do have an officer on the way, so just stay right outside and we'll get somebody out there for you, okay?
Oh, God. I didn't touch the body to check for a pulse.
That's okay. We'll have medical on the way as well, okay?
Okay.
Thanks.
Thank you.
From where the blood and Shauna's body were found, it was clear that she had been attacked on her way upstairs. The wounds on her body suggested that a hammer was probably used to kill her, and she had been in terrible pain in her last moments. When she tried to defend herself, she hit her head and broke her fingers. First, the paramedics thought she had been shot because there was a very deep hole in the side of her head. They told the police that between 3:30 and 4 a.m., they heard a thudding sound coming from the apartment. That being said, she usually got home at this time, so it didn't seem strange. After a short time, another neighbor called the police because they found Shauna's phone, health card, and some of her makeup on the side of a nearby road. As is usually the case, the first person to be questioned would be her ex-husband, George. The day before, George worked a 24-hour shift at the fire station. Detectives were happy with his alibi after checking it with his co-workers. The police were baffled and didn't know where to begin their search. They were not sure if the break-in 3 weeks before was connected or just a scary coincidence. On the other hand, Shauna's things were found outside of her house, so it was possible that the same person had come back to take more things and killed her when they realized she was awake. They also didn't know if Shauna was a random target or if someone had a reason for going after her. This also made Shauna's co-workers at the casino scared. Since they all worked the same shifts, they were all wondering who might be next. Paula, Shauna's sister, and her husband thought there was a lot more to this than just a random theft that went wrong. They still wanted to talk to George, even though he had an alibi. Paula chose to call George to find out what was going on.
Hello? George? Yeah, this is Paula. Can you tell me what's going on?
Donna passed away.
And what did they do to her?
God. I don't know. Just lay on the floor and bladder.
Is Shauna's body still there?
George then passed the phone over to a grief counselor who was at the scene, and Paula expressed exactly what she was thinking.
I have my suspicions that her husband may be involved in this, based on, many conversations I've had with my sister. I highly suspect that he may be involved.
Paula and her husband hung up the phone and booked the first flight to Las Vegas. Their thoughts were going 1,000,000 miles per hour. Paula told me that the way her sister died would always bother her. She talked about how much pain Shauna must have been in and how scared and aware she must have been that she was going to die. The police got a tip that would blow the case wide open just 24 hours after Shauna's body was found. Police were told by a man named Big Will that he had a homeless friend named Greyhound. He knew he killed a woman with a hammer because Greyhound told him so. When Big Will thought back, Greyhound wasn't scared, upset, or traumatized. Instead, he was laughing and happy, like he had just finished a mission. Big Will also said that Greyhound had told him to report it himself if he saw someone killed in the same way on the news. Greyhound had been telling the truth, and Big Will knew it when he heard that Shauna had been killed. He went straight to the police. Greyhound, whose real name was Noel Stevens, was living in a tent on the edge of town because he was homeless. It was said by Big Will that Greyhound often went to Albertsons to steal food and sell drugs at the gas station across the street. The police and Big Will went to these places because they thought that was where Greyhound would be most likely to be. There wasn't much time between them and seeing him. When the police approached Greyhound, they saw drugs on him and arrested him while they looked into Big Will's claims. The police already knew Noel Stevens for a number of reasons, such as charges of theft and drug use. He said he sold drugs, but he strongly denied having anything to do with Shauna's death. It was strange that Noel, who was a low-level criminal, would have gone so far to commit such a horrible crime without getting anything out of it. The interviewers didn't understand something, and Noel and Shauna didn't seem to have anything to do with each other. To find out where Noel was sleeping, the police were able to catch him, and then search the area around his tent. The place was out in the middle of nowhere, in the middle of the desert, far from any other people or things. Officers were afraid that because the area was so big, it could take weeks to find possible evidence. But not far from his tent, they found bloody underwear, a price tag from a hammer, and a pair of his pants. Back at the station, the police looked through Noel's phone and found one contact, George, who seemed to link everything together. Noel said, "That's my friend the firefighter," when asked who George was. George TFA had become friends with Noel Stevens. Shauna had been wary of him ever since she met him. The barcode on the hammer helped the police figure out where it had been bought. This led them to CCTV footage that shocked them. The video from inside the store made it clear that George TFA and Noel Stevens were shopping together and buying the hammer that would be used to kill Shauna. Police were now sure that George was the main person responsible for what happened to Shauna. When the police got back to the station, they showed Noel all the proof, and he finally admitted to killing Shauna. But Noel told the police that her ex-husband George wanted her dead and had paid him $600 to do it. This was exactly what they thought. Noel said that he and George had planned it for a long time. George gave him a key and money for dark clothes and asked him to stage a robbery a few weeks before she was killed, kind of like a practice run. Noel said that he broke into her house on September 29th and hid in her closet for a while. He then went into the living room to wait for her. Shauna cried, begged for her life, and asked him over and over again why he was doing this as he heard her coming up the stairs. The hammer broke after being hit 17 times by Noel, but he kept hitting her with the head of the hammer until she stopped moving. After telling this shocking story, he offered to show the police where he buried the hammerhead in the desert, giving them the murder weapon for good. It had been 9 days since Shauna was found in early September. On October 8th, detectives told George's mother and sister that he was now being looked into in connection with her death. They couldn't believe he had anything to do with it and were shocked. After a few minutes, George's sister called her brother to tell him what was going on. Right away, George got in his truck and started a fast and dangerous drive around Las Vegas. It ended when, going over 80 miles per hour, he crashed into a concrete wall at the end of Summerlin Parkway and the Las Vegas Beltway. Authorities noticed that there were no tire marks on the road. which meant that he hadn't tried to stop the car. It was clear that he had crashed on purpose and was trying to kill himself. George only lived because he was wearing his seatbelt, and he got medical care at University Medical Center for his injuries. After 2 days, police came to George's hospital bed and told him he was now being arrested. The simple answer from George was, "Okay." After that, he asked if he could call his lawyer, shower, and brush his teeth. Investigators thought they had a strong case and enough proof to charge both men. Not long after that, Noel Stevens pleaded guilty so that the death penalty would not be used against him. He also agreed to be the prosecution's main witness. He was given a prison sentence of 42 years to life. George went to court in August 2015, still pleading not guilty. He was ready to start his trial.
Hides in that bathroom area. He comes out of that bathroom area when Shauna walks in the residence, and he hits her over the head with the hammer several times, and he does break the hammer.
Opening statements began Tuesday in the trial of George Tiafe, a former Las Vegas firefighter accused of hiring a homeless man to kill his wife, Shauna Tiafe, who was beaten to death with a hammer after returning home from work at the Palms in September of 2012. During the first day of testimony, the prosecution played the recording of the 911 call from Tiafe.
911 emergency status. I need police, fire, or medical?
Police, I think I need to report a break-in and murder.
On all days of Shauna's trial, her family was there, dressed in her favorite color, pink. These people gave Mark DiGiacomo, the prosecutor, Shauna's lucky poker chip. He kept it with him as a lucky charm. Even though George didn't want to testify himself, many people, including his sisters and close friends, did talk about the man they said they knew. They said he was caring, honest, and hardworking, and they insisted he would never be involved in such a horrible crime. The prosecution thought they had a very strong case. In addition to the CCTV footage and what Noel had told them, they had many phone records that showed George had called Noel 87 times in September 2012, 5 of those times the night before the murder. This was an unbelievable amount of contact from someone who only hired Noel sometimes to do small jobs around the house. The defense, on the other hand, said that the CCTV footage only showed that the man bought tools for housework. Noel, the main witness, took the stand and told the same detailed story he had told the police years before.
How did you meet George?
I was sitting one day out in the front yard, smoking a cigarette and drinking, and he was walking his dog, and that's how I met him.
When you first met him, describe what kind of communication you would have with him. What kind of relationship, for lack of a better word, did you have with him?
I told him that I do yards and stuff like that.
And did he give you any work?
Yes.
Can you give the ladies and gentlemen of the jury any idea how long you've known George?
A few years.
Years?
Yeah.
Describe your relationship with George at this point.
What do you mean?
Well, are you just doing work for him, or is there
We're
something?
friends.
What kind of things have you done together?
We worked out, stuff like that.
When you go over there, what's his relationship with Shauna like? Good, bad, what?
Bad.
Okay. What do you
arguing?
What are they arguing about?
All kinds of stuff.
Like
money.
what? Did George ever tell you about any specific complaints he had about Shauna?
Yeah, she spent too much money.
Does there come a point in time where you have to, or you are asked to do something at that second house related to the divorce?
Yeah, kill Shauna.
And when George first says to you something about killing Shauna, did you believe him?
No.
Describe for us the best you can what it is, the nature of the conversation. What happens?
He offers me $1,000. I tell him, nah.
You tell him no?
Yes.
Well, why do you tell him no?
Because I don't really believe him. I think he's...
Think he's what?
Blowing hot smoke, man.
You think he's just blowing off some steam?
Yeah.
Is there some thing that changes at some point?
What do you mean?
At some point, does he say something to you that causes you to believe him?
Yeah.
Okay.
Raise the price up.
Well, what do you raise the price up to?
$5,000.
Was he going to hand you $5,000 as soon as it was done, or was there some plan on how to pay you?
He was gonna pay me when he got the money for insurance.
He said that alongside the $600 in cash from George, he also made some more money off of Shauna's engagement ring, which he stole and then pawned. Noel also claimed that he was actually promised tens of thousands by George after the murder was carried out, and detectives believe Noel called George from the gas station phone the day after, possibly to arrange for the rest of the payment. However, this meeting would never happen because that's the day the detectives made contact with Noel, and he was taken in. Knoll also testified that George had told him to use a fiberglass hammer because a wooden hammer might break during the attack. He said he took both hammers to the house but ended up using the wooden one, which did, in fact, break.
What do you do as she comes through the garage?
I wait until she walks by the door. When she walks by the door, then I come out.
And what are you holding when she comes out?
A hammer.
Now the hammer that you're using, why that hammer?
Because I didn't want to go and buy another one.
Okay. Let me ask you this: that hammer, where did you get that hammer from?
Lowe's.
Okay. But that day, I mean, where was it between the time you bought it at Lowe's until the time you used it to kill Shauna?
At my first camp.
Okay. And why didn't you use that hammer? You bought it before you bought some of the other hammers. Why not keep that hammer and use it every time you tried?
Because it's wood.
And what was the problem with wood?
It'll break.
Who told you that?
George.
Okay. So now you have the wood hammer in your hand because you were cheap. What happens?
I hit her in the head.
I know that you probably don't want to do this, but you're going to have to describe for the ladies and gentlemen of the jury what happens when you come out that door and you're holding that hammer.
She tells me why I'm doing this.
She says, "Why are you doing this?"
Yes.
Now, are you covered up in such a way that she shouldn't know who you are?
Yeah, I have a mask on.
Do you say anything to her?
No.
What do you do?
I hit her in the head.
When you hit her in the head, what happens?
She hits the floor.
And after she hits the floor, what do you do?
I jump on top of her.
And if you jump on top of her, what do you do?
I keep on hitting her.
With the hammer?
Yes.
What happens to the hammer while this is happening?
It breaks.
So after the hammer breaks, what do you do?
I throw the piece of wood away and grab the metal piece. Keep on hitting.
The prosecution said that everything Noel had said could be backed up by CCTV footage, phone records, and the timeline of events. However, Noel admitted to having frequent visual and auditory hallucinations while being cross-examined. The defense thought that this admission was enough evidence to suggest that Noel might have made up the whole story. They didn't deny that he killed Shauna, but they thought the idea that George had something to do with it was false. George's lawyer, Robert Langford, said that the story was interesting, but not more than that. He made the case that that's what you get if you put everything together just right, but there are many good reasons not to do that. Langford said that everyone knew Noel looked up to George and talked about how much he liked, respected, and trusted him. The prosecution said that George's admiration for Noel made it easy for him to control her. They also said that George was the only person who had a reason to want Shauna dead. They also thought George might have been planning to kill Noel because he had just bought a gun. It's likely that George would not have been caught if Noel had been killed. After both sides' lawyers finished presenting all of their evidence, the jury deliberated for 3 long days. The mood in the courtroom was very tense when they said they had reached a decision. No one knew which way things would go. Mark DeGiacomo put Shauna's lucky poker chip in his pocket before they went into the courtroom with the verdict.
The clerk will read the verdict. The defendant will rise.
District Court, Clark County, Nevada, the State of Nevada Plaintiff versus George M. TFA Defendant. Case number C-286-317, Department number 20. Verdict. We, the jury, in the above entitled case, find the defendant, George M. TFA, as follows. Count 1, conspiracy to commit murder. guilty of conspiracy.
George Tiafe, the former Las Vegas firefighter, was convicted Thursday of paying a homeless man to kill his wife. After 5 days of testimony and about 3 hours of closing arguments, a jury of 7 men and 5 women took 15 hours to find George Tiafe guilty of first-degree murder and 6 other counts.
Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, are these your verdicts as read? So say you one, so say you all.
And we begin with that breaking news. Former Las Vegas firefighter George Tiafe, accused of hiring a homeless man to kill his wife, stands guilty on all counts.
Action News anchor.
He showed no emotion as the verdict was read out. Following the verdict, the jury had to decide whether or not he should be eligible for parole.
Local firefighter George Tiafe will now spend the rest of his life behind bars. After just 4 hours of deliberation, the jury decided to sentence Tiafe to life without the possibility of parole. Action News reporter Marissa Keniston was in court today. She joins us live with more right now. Marissa.
Well, the jury had 3 decisions: life without the possibility of parole, 20 years to life, and 20 to 50 years. Take a listen as they read their decision.
Having found the defendant, George M. Tiafe, guilty of count 7, first-degree murder with use of a deadly weapon, impose a sentence of life without the possibility of parole.
He was also given an extra 81 years because he was found guilty of conspiracy, burglary, and robbery. The judge stated partly, "My sentence today is not based upon holding you to a higher standard. My sentence is based upon the fact that this was just pure evil." Paula, Shauna's sister, was happy with the outcome. She said, "George is a controlling manipulator, and I think the worst punishment for him would be to stand in prison and not be able to control anything for the rest of his life."
Clark County DA's office, Mark DiGiacomo and Pam Weckerly and everybody involved, homicide detectives. It was almost 3 years ago that Shauna was brutally murdered, and we're so happy that justice was served. We started this fight for her, and we've got so many supporters here in Las Vegas. So many people love Shauna, and we're just happy that we can finally put this past us and move forward and find whatever our normal is, without Shauna in our lives. But we're just so happy and satisfied that the jurors saw the truth.
George decided to appeal the verdict, and in his 107-page appeal, he wrote some of the notes himself. In these notes, he wrote about himself in the third person and said that the prescriptions had changed his mind and made it impossible for him to tell the difference between right and wrong. He even said that he thought God told him to commit a crime to protect his child. For the first time, it looked like he was admitting to planning the crime, but saying it was because of the effects of prescription drugs. George's appeal was set up as an online fundraiser to try to raise money for it. However, his appeal failed, and his conviction stood. George then said that his lawyer, Robert Langford, wasn't doing a good job because he ignored George's mental health problems and didn't ask for a psychiatric evaluation. He said that he hurt himself years ago and had been taking painkillers and other medicines, such as hormones and Adderall. Robert Langford replied that George had never shown any signs of psychosis or strange behavior that would have made him think George wasn't competent and able to help him with his defense. Langford has since dropped out of the case. In honor of Shauna, her family started Justice for Shauna, a group that speaks out against domestic violence and abusive relationships. Also, her grave was moved from Las Vegas to Utah, where she was born, so she could be buried next to her father. The girl who is Shauna's daughter now lives with her mother and spends a lot of time with her aunt Paula. She told Paula that Maddie smiles a lot when she talks about her mother, and it's clear that they always had a great time together. Many people were deeply affected by Paula's sister's death, but the worst thing is that her daughter will grow up without a mother who loved her so much. The judge who sentenced George said he didn't understand why he, of all people, would do something so cruel that hurt so many lives, not just Shauna's. Many people say that being a mother was Shauna's greatest and purest joy in life. Paula thinks that Shauna was thinking of her sweet little Madison as she died. Share your opinion with us in the comments and subscribe to the channel for more.
Utah has been arrested on suspicion of murder after police found the bodies of 7 babies stuffed in separate cardboard boxes in her former home. Megan Huntsman was arrested and booked into the Utah County Jail on suspicion of 6 counts of murder on Sunday, while the investigation continues.
On April 12, 2014, around 10 a.m., the police received a disturbing phone call from a man at a home in Pleasant Grove, Utah. Pleasant Grove is located approximately 35 miles away from Salt Lake City and is home to around 38,000 people. The house in question was a fairly new 3-bedroom home on a quiet and unsuspecting street. The front garden was scattered with various items, and a single ornament hung over the front door. Darren West had just been released from prison on a drugs-related charge and had returned to his former house to organize the garage and collect his belongings. He used to share the home with his now ex-wife, 39-year-old Megan Huntsman, and their 3 children, 11-year-old Sawyer, 17-year-old JC, and Darian, who had just turned 18. In 2005, Darren had pleaded guilty in federal court to 2 counts of possessing chemicals intended for manufacturing methamphetamine. He was sentenced to 9 years in prison, but maintained his innocence throughout. The house in question was owned by Darren's parents. Megan had also left the home in 2011 at the request of Darren's parents when they discovered she had been having an affair. Their daughters continued to live in the house with another relative caring for them. Megan moved around for a while, spending time living with her mother in West Valley City before moving in with her boyfriend Jimmy at Meadowood Village Mobile Home Park. Megan's mother described her daughter as very quiet, someone who kept to herself. She said Megan always struggled with mental health issues, rarely asked for help, and kept many secrets about her life. Megan and Darren had met in high school, and Megan soon became pregnant with their first child. She eventually moved out at the age of 18, and she and Darren got married before having their second daughter a little over a year later. Over time, Megan and Darren's lives spiraled out of control as they became addicted to methamphetamine. This addiction consumed Megan's life for years, leading to job loss and domestic violence in their marriage due to drug-related issues. When Megan finally stopped using meth, she turned to alcohol and became heavily dependent on it. Her drinking worsened in 2012 when her father took his own life. By 2014, Darren and Megan had long been separated and virtually estranged. Darren was back at the house with a few other people to help sort through his things. While moving items out of the garage, he noticed a strong odor, something that smelled like chemicals, coming from one of the cardboard boxes. The box was labeled baby stuff and belonged to Megan. It was tightly sealed with electrical tape. Once opened, he made a gruesome and horrifying discovery. The corpse of a baby wrapped in a plastic bag. The only person he could think of was Megan. He immediately called her, and she made a shocking admission. She claimed that the baby was theirs and that she had given birth to it while he was in prison. The baby had been stillborn, and out of fear and panic, she had wrapped it up and hidden it instead of seeking help. Darren was shaken and immediately contacted the authorities. They received an order to conduct a thorough investigation of the house. Pleasant Grove police quickly arrived at the property and taped off the home. While searching the garage, they found some bloody leather gloves, adding to the disturbing scene. Officers arrived at the mobile home park, where Megan's boyfriend lived, and informed him of the situation. One of her neighbors, a man named Mr. Brady, recalled that upon hearing that the police had found the baby's body, Megan had gone to him and begged him for a gun. While at the police station, Megan told the same story she had told Darren. She claimed that the baby in the box was her child, and that when she realized it was stillborn, she panicked and didn't know what else to do. However, as the search of the property continued, the officers were horrified and shocked to uncover even more than anyone could have imagined.
Darren West had just finished serving a 9-year prison sentence and was ready to start his new life with his 3 girls.
The current owners of the home called the police on Saturday after finding a child's remains while clearing out their garage.
Some family members of the residents were cleaning out the garage, came across a suspicious package, had kind of a pungent
found
odor.
in a home that had been owned by the same family for years. They were well known to the neighbors.
She was pregnant multiple times.
The bodies of 6 other infants that appear to be full stage were located inside the...
Discovering the remains of 7 infants in the garage.
6 more baby bodies were discovered wrapped in towels, shirts, or plastic bags and placed inside various boxes. Captain Michael Roberts described the scene as emotionally draining and profoundly upsetting for the investigators. One detective mentioned that some of the things the officers saw in that garage could never be unseen. The tiny bodies were sent to the medical examiner's office for testing, including determining the cause of death and establishing DNA matches. Just days after this heartbreaking discovery, an arrest was made that left the neighborhood in disbelief.
A woman in Utah has been arrested on suspicion of murder after police found the bodies of 7 babies stuffed in separate cardboard boxes in her former home. Megan Huntsman was arrested and booked into the Utah County Jail on suspicion of 6 counts of murder on Sunday while the investigation continues.
Megan Huntsman was arrested and booked into the Utah County Jail on suspicion of 6 counts of murder on Sunday while the investigation continues. She was charged with 6 counts of first-degree murder and is currently on suicide watch in Utah County Jail. A devastating secret that had been concealed for what would turn out to be 18 years was finally revealed. All of the children found in the garage were confirmed to be Megan's. One of the babies had been stillborn, but the other 6 had either been suffocated or strangled. There were 5 girls and 2 boys among them. It was determined that her poor babies could have only been alive for a matter of minutes before they were killed. We are still investigating the motives to find out why this happened, how this could have happened, said Police Chief Mike Smith. In my opinion, no matter what we come up with or say, it's just not something that you can wrap your mind around, how a mother could do something like this. When officers told Megan that they had found more than one baby, she appeared confused.
Police say the Utah woman accused of killing 6 babies and hiding them along with a stillborn couldn't tell detectives exactly how many infants she had in her home. KSTU reports Megan Huntsman told detectives there were 8 or 9 babies in her home, but police said they found 7. Police said 6 of those infants died after Huntsman allegedly strangled them. KTVX notes...
She later admitted that she had only made a guess and wasn't actually sure how many they would find. The question everyone needed answers to was why. Megan eventually confessed to detectives that she wanted to spare her babies from the terrible life she would have ultimately provided for them. She explained that her life was too chaotic, consumed by drugs and alcohol, and compounded by her mental health issues. She knew she couldn't care for them physically, emotionally, or financially. I deprived my little babies of the opportunity of life, she said. I think my mind was just so out of it. All I was focused on was the next fix. Between 1996 and 2006, Megan had become pregnant 7 times. Police believed she would have given birth alone and in secret in her home, as there were no records of her ever having been to a hospital. Except for the baby that had been stillborn, she had killed every other one within minutes of their birth. She had often covered them in chemicals to conceal any smell of decomposition, wrapped them up in various things, and hidden them in the garage before continuing with her life. Megan and Darren had 3 children still living in the house, and detectives needed to understand why she had made the decision to kill her other babies. She told police it all began happening after she became addicted to methamphetamine. Her first 2 daughters were born before she began using the drug, and although she was pregnant with her 3rd living daughter when she was heavily addicted, too many people were aware of the pregnancy, including Darren, so she had to go through with it. After her daughter was born, she barely told anyone about her other pregnancies, and those she did tell were later informed by Megan that she had miscarried. She admitted she was selfish and had spent over a decade choosing drugs over anything else. From everything Megan had said, it appeared to be entirely her own doing, with no one else playing a part in it. She told police she had wanted to move the bodies out of the garage but was unsure how to do so without getting caught. Neighbors in the area expressed devastation and shock upon learning of Megan's arrest.
Several neighbors on this street who say not only is it shocking, not only is it disturbing, but it's just very sad because they knew her very well.
Quite frankly, I'm still in a state of shock. We were wondering what the heck is going on.
Yeah, we were worried about her because we could see that she was not looking in good health. And we were worried about the children that lived there with her. Her 3 daughters lived there.
The Hawkers said that the answers only raised more questions, such as how Huntsman had allegedly concealed 7 different pregnancies from the tight-knit community.
She always looked kind of slim. To have this many babies full term, it's like, where were they?
You didn't have any idea she was ever pregnant, and you had no idea she had a meth problem?
No, absolutely not. She was very quiet and pretty much stayed to herself, stayed in the house. I saw her walking up the driveway a few times, but couldn't hardly ever get her to wave. Just a very quiet person. I never would have ever thought she was on drugs or pregnant. The first 2 girls that she had, no one knew she was even pregnant until someone said, "We need to go to the hospital. Megan's in the hospital having a baby." And that was the only thing I can ever think of. It's hard to imagine 10 pregnancies because she does have 3 daughters, but 10 and never showing. No, I never would have. I had talked to her before. I helped her mow her lawn a few times, helped her with the lawnmower. I never had a clue. And that was the days that she would have, killed the babies. And I never even dreamed that she was on meth.
The majority of people said that although they had noticed her gaining and losing weight over the years, they had no idea she was pregnant. Darren's family issued a statement saying they were in a state of shock and confusion, mourning the tragic loss of life and trying to stay strong to help each other through this awful event. Despite Darren initially disputing the possibility of paternity due to the affair his ex-wife had been having, he was later confirmed to be the father of all 7 babies. Darren told the police he only had knowledge of a couple of pregnancies, but was told by Megan that she had miscarried. He expressed shock at the discovery, as much as anyone. Authorities said they didn't believe he was aware of the murders and was not considered a person of interest at the time. In the end, there just turned out to be no evidence that would implicate him, according to officers. When asked how he could not have known about any of this, Police Captain Michael Roberts said, "That's the million-dollar question." Furthermore, no one had any idea of how Megan's grown children, who were still living in the house, did not notice their mother was pregnant either. On one occasion, Megan had actually given birth upstairs in the bathroom before killing the newborn and cleaning up, all while members of her family were sitting just downstairs. As hearings for Megan Huntsman began, she arrived at court with cuffs around her ankles and wrists, often looking straight at the floor as her legal team spoke. She was held on a $6 million bail, $1 million for each baby. Megan's legal team was eager for a speedy process.
Okay, I see that you have filled out the form for the public defender's office. First of all, are you ready to sign?
Yes.
All right. You're currently held in custody.
Mm-hmm.
And we indicate no income. Let's see, the last time you worked was December 2013?
Yeah.
You haven't worked since then?
It was actually 2012, sorry.
Oh, okay. All right. Do you otherwise have any money in the bank or any other investments or anything that would help you reach any? No.
No, I don't.
We're requesting a continuance of 2 weeks if possible.
Yeah, we've spoken about the idea that the state has some pretty serious accusations that they intend to bring. I've spoken with her about the delay. 2 weeks, she's concerned that that's fairly long. In the balance of interest, I think if the state is at all able to file something sooner, we would prefer that.
Megan would not face the death penalty for the charges against her. This decision was based on the fact that she was accused of killing her babies between 1996 and 2006, which was before the law in Utah changed in 2007. The change in the law made murder a capital offense if the victim was younger than 14. Before this law passed, killing a child was not considered one of the factors that could make someone eligible for the death penalty. These were very cold, calculated killings, said prosecutor Jeff Berman. He described Megan as a woman who was remarkably, unbelievably, incredibly indifferent and callous. Judge Daryl McDade presided over the case and recalled that he was the judge who had signed the initial search warrant on the day the babies' bodies were found. He admitted that he had quietly hoped and prayed he wouldn't be the one assigned to deal with it in court. He remarked, "I really thought I'd seen it all until this case. It shocked me then, and it shocks me now."
She said that she had the baby, she would hold it for a short time. She said that none of the babies were alive more than a minute or two. And then she said that she used her thumbs, and she described what she would just show me like this.
These were very coldly calculated killings.
She was the Megan that I had always known. No one would have ever guessed this shy, timid girl was capable of this. The person I know is not the same girl that the media has portrayed her to be.
Megan agreed to enter a plea rather than go to trial. This was under an agreement that could reduce her minimum sentence to 5 years. But by taking this, it would leave fewer options for her to appeal down the line. Prosecutors were satisfied to allow this to go ahead and said it would have been hard to prove a case against her at trial if she hadn't cooperated with police. On the 12th of February 2015, Megan Huntsman pleaded guilty to all 6 counts of murder.
Charges beyond a reasonable doubt for jury. You understand that? Count 3, murder, a first-degree felony. What is your plea? Count 4, murder, a first-degree felony. What is your plea? Count 5, murder, a first-degree felony. What is your plea?
Judge Daryl McDade lamented the facts of the Megan Huntsman case as he sentenced her for killing 6 of her babies. It was April of last year when Huntsman's estranged husband called police after opening a cardboard box in the family's garage in Pleasant Grove. Huntsman declined to speak in court except with a statement read by her attorney. "Depression and alcohol took a hold of me the same way drugs did. I cannot give a reasonable answer why I was capable of such a sick and heinous crime. I held my secret for 18 years.
As part of the plea deal, prosecutors had agreed to recommend that the 5 years to life in prison sentences run concurrent to one another. But Judge Daryl McDade was not satisfied by this and said,
"Therefore, I do think that it's appropriate that 3 of the charges run consecutively in this matter, and they can run concurrent with the other charges."
Following this, the Utah Board of Pardons and Paroles scheduled Megan's parole hearing for April 2064 when she will be 89 years old. Prosecutor Jeff Berman expressed his belief that even then, she would never be released. He stated, "My guess is that she'll serve the rest of her life."
She used her own hands to strangle and smother 6 of her babies, and it's hard to imagine anything more heinous than that.
It's been horrible for our department, and some of the things that officers saw in that garage, they can't unsee. And it was very, very emotionally tough on many of our officers.
In court, her 3 daughters read statements and stood by their mother, expressing their belief that she had always been the best mom to them. One of them said, "No matter what anyone thinks you are a good person." Another read, "This is not the mom I know. The mom I know was the one who had dinner for us every night, kept a clean house, and was a loving mother. Nobody could have guessed my mom would do anything like this." Megan's sister and mother also came forward to defend Megan. Megan's sister told the judge, "Megan is not a monster, she's not evil. From what I understand, she was scared." The crimes of Megan Huntsman left the neighborhood shattered and her family and friends utterly devastated. It is simply an unfathomable series of events that cannot be made sense of, and it is something that will haunt many people for a long time to come. Share your opinion with us in the comments and subscribe to the channel for more. When we think about what makes a place great to live, We often think about how safe it is, how nice the neighborhood is, and how friendly the people who live there are. One country meets all of the requirements. Iceland is an island nation off the east coast of Greenland that has been voted one of the best places to live in the world over and over again. Just over 340,000 people live there, making it one of the world's smallest cities. But its stunning natural beauty makes up for it in a big way. People come from all over the world to see the natural springs and rolling hills. People from all over the world come to this small country to see its many attractions, such as its beautiful architecture and the aurora borealis. Because Iceland has harsh winters, there isn't always a lot of sunlight, but that just adds to the mystery of the place, which is so different from what most of us know and understand. One of the most appealing things about Iceland is the friendliness, openness, and kindness of its people. Due to the tough terrain and harsh winters, people rely on each other, value community, and take care of their neighbors. There are strong social attitudes against crime. They have no army, and their police officers do not carry guns. People often leave their doors unlocked and get lifts with strangers. The peace and quiet of Iceland would be broken one Friday night in 2017 by a brutal murder that seemed to have no reason. The country would be left in shock. We are going to talk about Birna Briansdottir. Birna Briansdottir lived in the southeast of Reykjavik. While her parents were no longer together, they remained on friendly terms, and she was the center of their world. She was bright and spirited, with her fiery personality reflected in her striking auburn hair. She was incredibly witty with a sharp sense of humor, which made her popular among her friends. She was carefree and whimsical, but always responsible, with this maturity reflected in her relationship with her family and her mature attitude toward work. Music was a big passion, and Birna wasn't picky. She would listen to anything from rap to pop and from rock to folk. It was this openness and free spirit that made so many people love her. Birna had a close group of friends and liked going out at night in Reykjavik. She worked in the fashion section of a busy department store. To relax, she would get drinks at the local bar after work and then go out to really let her hair down. For sure, this is what Birna did that night, January 13th, 2017. After closing the shop, she got drinks, played a few rounds of cards, and then went to the center of the capital to laugh, drink, and dance all night. They went to Horror, a place where new bands would play, and Birna was soon dancing on the stage. While her friends were ready to leave by 2 a.m., Birna wasn't. She wanted to keep having fun. She left the club just before 5 a.m. and walked out into the 9-degree weather. She then went to get falafel and then walked back to her house. A woman walking alone in Reykjavik was not rare. People trusted each other and looked out for each other. Due to her intoxication, she dropped coins and stumbled into a stranger on the side of the road. As she carried on walking, she turned a corner and walked down a narrow lane towards the sea. Then she vanished. Because she was known for being on time when she didn't show up for work, people were worried right away. Maria, a school friend who worked with Birna, was upset right away that she wasn't there. It got worse when she tried to call her cell phone. It wouldn't work, and Birna never turned off her phone. People thought she had just gone back to her dad's house to sleep off her hangover. Her friends who had been out with her that night also thought this, but she wasn't there. Scylla, Birna's mother, was called because she was also worried about where her daughter was. She knew Birna and knew that this wasn't like her at all. Without waiting, her family called the police right away to say she wasn't there. Realizing the power of social media, Scylla posted to her Facebook page, "Dear friends, it's not like her that we can't reach her. Please share and let's find her, Scylla." Iceland is a small community, and before long, Scylla's desperate pleas on Facebook were being shared, and news of Birna's disappearance began to circulate. The stress and worry of having a child go missing are unimaginable. Her parents couldn't sleep, and they persistently made calls to all the emergency services, desperately seeking any new information on Birna's whereabouts. The following day, the police were able to trace her last known mobile interaction before it went dead or was turned off. Just before 6 a.m., her phone pinged off a mobile tower in a port town. Hafnarfjordur, 6 miles outside of the capital. Right away, Scylla got in her car and drove there, calling out to her daughter and looking around the area. A group of family and friends worked with her to get Birna back home alive. Soon, 36 hours had passed since Birna had disappeared into the night in Reykjavik. Her friends and family were sure that something bad had happened to her. She was a trustworthy young woman, and this was not like her at all. Not much was known to the police, though. There was no proof of a murder or kidnapping, so they couldn't do much. As word of her disappearance spread, it quickly made the front page of every newspaper. Every newscaster in Iceland talked about Birna all the time. Her face was on every newspaper page. In the early hours of Sunday morning, her parents went to the police and begged them to search for her. They said she would not have gone off on her own accord, much less not told anyone where she was going. She had no money troubles or relationship problems. Everyone who knew Birna adored her. A case as baffling and unusual as this required Iceland's best detectives, one of which was Grim Or Grimson. He had 30 years of investigative experience. He was even part of a special team who spent more than 5 years building a case against those whose misconduct and corruption contributed to the financial crash of 2009. After this, he returned to his roots as a police officer, saying he missed the fast-paced work. Like his colleagues, he too wasn't initially that concerned about Birna. There were many other factors that he had to consider. People do go missing in Iceland. Anything from mental health problems to simply staying at a friend's house and not telling people. Most missing people would eventually turn up. A lot of CCTV is set up in capital cities around the world, but Reykjavik isn't like most of them. The people of Iceland don't like being watched, and since crime isn't common, the people tend to police themselves. They watch out for each other and strangers, but someone saw her the night she went missing. CCTV showed her leaving the club with her coins in the ground and walking into a stranger. When Grimson checked the next camera less than a block away, she was gone. There were 2 options. Either she had gone down the side road off the corner or got into a car. Grimson paid close attention to the little things, and he was sure that the broken CCTV footage held a clue that would lead them to Birna. The red Kia Rio he saw was going the other way on the other side of the road from Birna. A short time after Birna had been seen at the Lebowski bar, he saw it drive by. The police had to follow up on this lead. What was next? They couldn't see the license plate, who was driving, or how many people were in the car. There were more than 100 of those kinds of cars in Iceland. This didn't make her parents feel better about their worries. Scylla was incandescent when they explained the quality of the tape was too poor to extract any more details from. Scylla said, "Can't you find it like in the movies?" Grimson replied, "It doesn't work like that." The police knew that even though they didn't have enough CCTV, the people in the area had hope. They asked the people of Iceland to help them. At a rare press conference, Grimson and Birna's upset family spoke in front of the cameras and begged Iceland to help them find her. In front of the media, Scylla showed what kind of person her daughter was by saying that she was very smart, bilingual, loved other cultures, and loved to travel. The police's hunch at the press conference would lead to a breakthrough. It proved right, and before long, they had their first lead. A pair of brothers decided to search Hafnarfjordur, where her phone had pinged off the tower, and when there, they headed towards the harbor. After searching in a fenced-off area, they found a pair of boots, black Doc Martens, identical to the pair that Birna had last been seen wearing. Using the power of social media, they posted a picture of them to Facebook, and before long, the officers arrived. They confirmed the shoes were Birna's. The police finally felt like they were making progress. Grimson told the police to carefully look through the CCTV footage, and soon they saw a picture they knew. At 6 a.m. on the morning Birna went missing, a red Kia Rio pulled into the harbor. A drunk man got out of the car and stumbled toward a fishing trawler that had already been docked. After that, the car drove off. Finally, they were able to read the license plate. The car had been rented by Thomas Muller Olsen, a 25-year-old fisherman from Greenland. A family had since rented the car and said there was a smell of chemicals coming from the back. After taking the car away, police were determined to find any sign of Berna. Eventually, they found a clue. There were blood spots in the back seat. So that they could find out if it was Berna, samples were quickly taken and sent to Sweden to be analyzed. For Grimson and his team, it was now a race against time. They needed to find the trawler and their only suspects, Thomas Müller Olsen and Nikolai Olsen. Thomas and Nikolai weren't related, but were crewmates on the trawler. Thomas was considered easygoing, approachable, and generally likable while on board. His phone pinged, and Thomas went pale. It was a news article saying that the ship he was on was linked to the disappearance of Berna. A journalist had contacted a Facebook group used by the men on board and asked who had rented the car and who was seen on the CCTV. Thomas was visibly shaken. His captain assured him if he was innocent, he would be fine. There was a huge challenge for Grimson and his team. The longer his suspects were on that boat, the longer they had to make up stories and get rid of anything that could be used against them. Not to worry, the ship's captain already had a plan. He read about the connection between the ship and Berna, so he turned the ship around and went back to Iceland. He and his top officers agreed that they would say the engine problems made them have to turn around, and the suspects couldn't read anything about the case because the Wi-Fi was turned off. In order to catch them off guard, the police sent members of their elite counter-terrorism squad, also known as the Viking Squad, to board the ship as soon as it arrived back in Iceland. Finally, the police were able to catch their two suspects after dropping officers off from a helicopter on the ship. The reaction of the public to the case was massive, and the whole country was waiting on tenterhooks for any news of what had happened to Berna. The case seemed to take over all aspects of Icelandic life. Although their intentions were good, online sleuths only added to the confusion, and it became hard to distinguish rumor from fact. Stories ranged from a body being found in a lake to Berna and other women being found alive on the trawler, swirled around social media. Grimson stayed calm and asked everyone else to do the same. People who meant well, though, were not helping the search for Berna. Around 11 p.m. on Wednesday, the ship came back into port, and the two suspects were handcuffed and brought back to Iceland. Then the terrible news came out. Berna's blood was found in the rental car. It didn't take the police long to question the two men. Nikolaj and Thomas were sure they hadn't hurt Berna, and they both told the same story about what happened that terrible night. They had split up and gone to different bars to drink before getting back together as the night was coming to a close. Nikolaj was already very drunk, so it was hard for him to remember what they said. He had no idea who they were, but they said they had picked up two girls on the street, and one of them was Berna. Thomas said he left Nikolaj at the ship and then drove off. Then he went to the back with the two girls and let them kiss. After an hour, he dropped them off. The police were inclined to believe Nikolaj. He had been seen walking away and was clearly in no fit state to do anything. However, when it came to Thomas, they had a bad feeling, and the evidence against him was stacking up. He was examined by a doctor who determined that the wounds on his chest were signs of a struggle or fight. When searching the ship, the police found a driver's license in the bin. It belonged to Berna. They also found drugs with a street value of nearly £1.5 million. Thomas claimed to have slept in the car, but the police checked the odometer, which showed that the car had been taken for a long drive. They also had CCTV on his person, because he was seen buying plastic bags and cleaning fluid before cleaning the inside of the car. The police didn't believe his story that he was sick and just trying to clean the car because they knew the blood spots were Berna's. The back of the car lit up when they used luminol to bring out any blood that couldn't be seen with the naked eye. This showed that it was completely covered in blood. 4 days after she vanished, Iceland launched the biggest search in its history. The search and rescue project manager said, "Today, she is our sister, our daughter." And that became the mantra. We don't live in a society where we tolerate a 20-year-old woman being abducted in the night. It wouldn't be long before the police found what they were looking for. A Coast Guard helicopter noticed something floating in the water near a local lighthouse, and it was a body. They had found Berna. When this news came out, Iceland went into mourning, and people were shocked and couldn't believe what they were hearing. Things like this only happened in movies and other places. In Iceland, they didn't happen. People in Greenland were shocked and saddened along with their Nordic neighbors. The main street in Reykjavik, where Birna had gone, was turned into a shrine with candles lit up. The funeral for Birna took place at the Hallgrímskirkja, which is the country's largest church. Over 2,000 people, including the president and prime minister, were there. People needed answers from the police, and they had to give them. First, they had to figure out what killed the person. Birna had been found naked, but they could find no evidence of a sexual assault. The examiner found that she had suffered blunt force trauma to the head and had been strangled as well. However, the official cause of death was ruled as drowning. She had survived the initial attack and was alive when she was put into the water. Even though Grimson and his team looked at all the evidence, they couldn't find any link between Nikolai's death and the murder of Birna. They didn't think he had anything to do with it. He was freed after 2 weeks in jail and hours of questioning. They looked back at Thomas again. His story hadn't changed, and he wasn't going to change it either. During 9 interviews with the police, he insisted that he was not guilty. As more evidence came in, the police still couldn't figure out why Thomas would kill Birna, even though they had a crime scene and a suspect. His DNA was found on a lace of Birna's Doc Martens, and his fingerprints were on her old driver's license from March 30th, 2017. Breaking news alerts were spreading all over Iceland. The police had charged Thomas Müller Olsen with drug possession and murder. Media interest in the story reached a fever pitch as his trial began in August of that year. It was during his trial that he sensationally changed his story. He said that there were not 2 girls, only one, Birna. He claimed that he had left the car to go to the bathroom, and Nikolai had driven off with Birna in the back seat. When he returned, she wasn't with him, shocking the court. He was now trying to pin the murder on his crewmate, admitting to the drug possession, but denying murder. At the end of September, the 3 judges found him guilty on all charges. He was then taken to start his 19-year prison sentence. When Thomas Müller Olsen tried to appeal his conviction, the High Court upheld it. The next year, the High Court refused to look at another appeal. There was a lot of shock in Iceland when Birna Briansdóttir was killed. This case will be remembered. It changed us a bit, our feeling of safety, the chaplain who led Birna's funeral said. More CCTV was put up around Reykjavik, and women became more cautious around strangers. Even though Grimson had been a police officer for 30 years, this was his first murder case. People in Iceland saw him as a hero because he was calm and coordinated. He is now proud to work for his country at the European Union's agency in The Hague for law enforcement cooperation. Even though Birna Briansdóttir's murder was a terrible event, her memory is still alive, and the people of Iceland are determined that she will never be forgotten. Share your opinion with us in the comments, and subscribe to the channel for more. Denise Dragon's well-known case shows how naive idealism, morbid jealousy, and a strong desire for illegal drugs can combine to cause tragedy and destroy 3 young lives at the same time. At the time of the tragedy, the oldest person involved, and I'm not afraid to use this word, was only 22 years old. He really tried hard to keep playing with the feelings of the 2 girls, who were only 17 and 19 years old. They were in a love triangle for a short time, but it ended in 2 pregnancies, crazy stalking, and murder. Mario Topanera was born in 1996 in a small town called Alcorcón in Spain, just outside of Madrid. The young man never put himself through the stress of school or looking for work. He lived with his parents when he was 22 years old and worked part-time jobs to pay the bills. Mario loved writing graffiti and was very good at drawing, but he couldn't use his art skills anywhere. He was happy with his small part-time jobs painting buildings outside and inside walls. The main way Mario made money was by selling illegal goods. He didn't do it himself. Instead, he found people who were interested and took them to a remote part of the city where his friends could get them anything they needed. Topanera made a lot of money from these deals, so he was always looking for people who could help him. It's unclear if Mario's parents knew what he was doing, but if they did, They clearly didn't care. Mario had a good looks and a strong personality. He was popular with both sexes. The young man was very good at using his charm to make friends and often dated several girls at the same time without meaning to. Denise Maria Dragan was born in Romania in 2001 to Emil and Daniela Dragan. Her parents were very young and having a hard time with money, so they had to go work in Spain and leave their little girl with her grandparents. After a few years, they were able to get married legally in another country, get a good job, and pretty much set up their daily lives. They moved their little daughter to their home in sunny Spain. The girl quickly made friends where she lived and found it easy to learn the language. At school, she did well in almost all of her classes and got good grades. The little girl was also interested in dancing, happily spent several hours a day in the studio, and regularly competed in a variety of events. When the girl was in middle school, her parents' marriage fell apart, and they decided to split up. The child went to live with her mother after the parents got divorced, but her father continued to care for her in every way, even though he had a new family. He helped her communicate, gave her money, and tried to be a part of her life in every way. Soon after, her mother also got married again, and a year later, the girl had a younger brother whom she loved and spent a lot of time with. When Denise was 16, she decided she wanted to learn how to do hair and become a stylist. She quit her studies and dance classes to focus on her new hobby full-time. Her parents didn't stop her or try to discourage her. They let their daughter make her own decisions to gain experience. Denise got a job at a beauty salon owned by family members. Rocio Martinez, a 19-year-old girl from the suburbs of Madrid, was the third main character in this dramatic story and the last link in the love triangle. Her father was a police officer who was transferred to Alcorcón, where he moved his whole family. Rocio was impulsive, scandalous, and sometimes even angry as a child. She was used to getting what she wanted and didn't put up with Rege. Martinez was never charged for what she did, though, because her father was a police officer and had a lot of connections. Rocio believed that no matter what she did, her father would get her out of trouble. Rocio was also very pretty, so she always had a lot of fans. When Denise stopped going to school and started working as a stylist, she had more time to hang out with her friends. Since high school, she had a best friend named Sylvia, to whom she confided all of her secrets and worries. One spring evening in 2018, Denise and her friend were walking around the city when they met Mario, a handsome and happy guy who immediately struck up a conversation with Denise. That same evening, they went on a date. A few days after meeting, Denise invited her chosen one to a family dinner to meet her mother. But Daniela did not agree with her daughter's choice. The woman did not like Denise's lover right away. Something about him scared her. Her mother quickly looked into him and was horrified to find out that Mario was involved in drug trafficking. Daniela had a serious talk with her daughter in the hopes that she would end their relationship. Denise quickly learned that Mario isn't as nice and kind as he acts. The young man tried to control every step of her passport, wanted to know where she went and who she talked to without her permission, took her phone, and checked her accounts and social networks for months. The girl in love hoped that her boyfriend would change so that they could have a strong, long-lasting relationship, but things only got worse as Mario started to treat her like his property. For another thing, she was only 17 years old and wasn't ready to be a mother or take care of a new child. Denise then decided to be honest with her mother and told her everything. She then asked her mother for advice on what to do next. The woman listened to her daughter and told her that she should end the pregnancy, but that was her choice. Denise gave it some more thought and then did what her mother told her to do. She had an abortion. When Panara found out, he was furious. He thought Denise had betrayed him by having the abortion, since she had no right to do so, and only he could decide what to do with the child. The couple's relationship ended, but the young man wouldn't let Denise go and leave her alone. He also promised to hurt her as much as she hurt him in return. He paid for his ex-wife and daughter a trip to one of the fashionable European resorts where they went together. The vacation really did Denise good. She calmed down, became a little relaxed, began to make plans for life again, and seemed to no longer think about Mario. But the vacation was over, and Denise returned home again. Mario did not ask Longpine for his former passport and almost immediately began an affair with 19-year-old Rocio Martinez. This fiery, aggressive, and conflicted girl was the complete opposite of the quiet and calm Denise could make a scandal in the same place, go into a fight, or throw a tantrum. Rocio also experimented with illegal substances and could easily break the law, knowing that she would not be punished for it. With Mario, they quickly got together and had fun together because the guy could get any illegal drug she asked for, wanting to test its effect on himself. However, Mario couldn't forget and let go of his ex-girlfriend. He still wanted to control her to know where she was and what she was doing. Periodically, he wrote to her on social networks, called her, and even offered to resume the relationship. Denise, who had a very hard time with this breakup, met him from time to time and communicated with him, but was not going to reunite because of fear. When Martinez found out that her boyfriend was communicating with his ex, she made a terrible scandal and in a fit of rage screamed that she would kill them both. By that time, Mario had already realized what his chosen one was capable of, so he promised her that it would not happen again. However, Rocio's such an answer did not calm down, and she decided to destroy her rival, if not physically. Then morally, Rocio began to call Denise, showering her with insults and wishing her a speedy death. But this was not enough, and she began to send messages to her rival with threats of violent reprisals. However, Dragon considered these threats to be empty words and did not consider it necessary to contact the police because of them during that period. Rocio became pregnant, about which the first thing she wrote to her rival, saying that this child is desired and she will keep it for Denise. This news was a painful blow, but soon Martinez, due to poor health and addiction to illegal substances, lost the child, and all her anger she again poured out in a new threatening message to Denise. Denise, wanting to start a new life and forget about Mario, began an affair with a young man named Evan. They got married a month after meeting, and Evan moved in with her husband. Mario was hurt that his relationship with Denise ended so quickly. So quickly after his ex-girlfriend married someone else, he started calling and texting her again to set up dates with her. In November 2018, Mario and Rocio were having dinner at a small diner on the outskirts of the city. The guy left his phone on the table while he went out for a while, and Rocio decided to check it out. That's when she saw the calls and messages Mario had been sending to Dennis Martinez. She had a temper tantrum, screamed, cried, and tried to hit her young man. In response, Mario offered his girlfriend to personally clear things up with Denise. She thought it was her husband knocking on the door, so she opened it without looking through the peephole. Denise was still talking to her friend, so she could hear everything that happened next. When Denise saw her ex-lover's friend at the door, she only had time to say her name out loud and in shock before she was stabbed in the stomach. Rocio then left right away. The wounded Denise, losing consciousness, asked her friend to call an ambulance and told her who attacked her. Dragoni was taken to the hospital in critical condition. Doctors fought desperately for her life for several hours, but the wound was too deep. She lost a lot of blood and it was almost impossible to save her. After Rocio dealt the fatal blow to her rival, she ran back to the car, jumped into the cabin, and told Mario to get out of here. On the way, she confessed everything to him, and together they disposed of the crime weapon and washed the traces of blood off her hands and clothes. Mario decided it would be best for them to hide for a while. He called his relatives who lived in another city and asked them to visit. When they arrived, the relatives noticed that Rocio looked strange and was very nervous, but she wrote it off as malaise. The couple stayed overnight at Mario's relative's house, thinking about what to do and how to proceed. When they learned the next morning that Denise had died from the wound, Rocio immediately called her father and told him everything. She was sure that her dad would use all of his connections to get her out of jail this time, but the policeman's father didn't help his daughter, who had killed another man. He followed her to another city and then turned her over to the police. Sylvia, who had been talking to the victim on the phone at the time of the crime, was one of the main witnesses in the case. The case file also had many threatening messages that Rocio had sent to her rival over the course of the case. Surprisingly, Tobinera wasn't involved in the crime. He denied all guilt and said he only took Rocio to his ex-girlfriend's house so that they could finally get along again and stop fighting. He also said he didn't know Rocio had a knife and didn't see any blood on her hands or clothes when she got back to his car. At their next court date, the couple denied their guilt again, this time saying that they were not at the scene at all. They said they had spent the whole evening at the house of one of Murillo's relatives and that someone else had stabbed Denise to death. Martinez said she didn't hate her rival and didn't have any reason to kill her, but Rocio was found guilty and sent to prison for 18.5 years. Mario, on the other hand, got away with everything and started writing a new book right away, forgetting to be careful. Boasts that the girls were ready to kill each other for him. He told them in great detail what happened that terrible night, and the parents of dead Denise quickly learned of it. The Dragon family went back to court and asked that the man who killed their daughter be punished. This time, Top and Air were arrested, but after a few days, the man was freed on his own recognizance. In the end, he was found not guilty and was freed again. The parents of Denise tried to appeal the court's decision more than once, asking for Rocio's sentence to be lengthened and Mario to be jailed as an accomplice. However, Mario has still not been brought to justice. Share your opinion with us in the comments and subscribe to the channel for more. On August 22, 2016, residents of Podu Caramal, Spain rushed to work and discovered flyers pasted all around town by volunteers. These flyers depicted 18-year-old Diana Maria Kerr Lopez Pinel. This young girl stood about 6 feet tall, had black hair, brown eyes, and was described as being irresistibly attractive by all who saw her picture. As Diana disappeared, she was wearing pink shorts, a t-shirt, white sweatshirt and black sneakers, clothing she left home wearing, before suddenly disappearing from sight. Since that night, Diana's family, along with volunteers and special services, had tirelessly searched for any sign of Diana, searching every street corner, hoping they may discover some clues which could bring Diana home. Juan Carlos, Diana's father in Madrid, took no time in notifying police and local newspapers of any information or leads about her whereabouts. If anyone has any piece of information, no matter how small, please reach out. The police need your help, reported Diana's father. Diana's mother, on the verge of depression, beseeched the public to help search for Diana. We have tried everything possible to locate Diana but still have no answers. Please reach out if any information can help. Even minor details could become crucial in helping find our daughter. Di Maria Kerr Lopez Pinel was born August 12, 1998, in Madrid, to Diana Cristina Lopez Pinel Pinjo and Juan Carlo Carre, and had one sister, Valeria. Although their family had been quite prosperous prior to 2013, when their parents' separation caused great distress for both Diana and Valeria, as depression set in and there were often disagreements regarding who should provide care, their mother or their father usually took precedence in providing it. Although Diana lived away from her father during vacations, they would visit Podu Caramal with its population of approximately 10,000 regularly during summer vacations. Diana spent her vacations as usual here during 2016, enjoying both its tranquility and beauty each summer. Sunday, August 21st was set up to be just like any other day. Around 10 Rao, Diana informed her mother that she intended to visit Val Inkland Park, not far from their cottage where they were staying, and meet up with her friends for fun on account of Feast of Virgin Carmen. Diana often made this trek there herself, so there was nothing unusual or unreasonable about it for Diana's mother, so she gave Diana permission. Again, Diana spent that evening joyfully among her friends. 4 hours later, Diana bid farewell and headed home, unaware that this would be their final encounter. On her journey home, she met Paso de Ariel nearby a pizzeria, where Diana frequently spent her time. They exchanged goodbyes at around 2:30 a.m. Paso de Ariel would become Diana's last person seen that dark night. Maria Kerr Lopez. Pinel discovered something was amiss with Diana early in the morning of August 22, 2016. At 8:30, she realized something wasn't right with her daughter. She hadn't returned from a party, and her cell phone was off or unreachable, raising suspicion among Maria Carey. So quickly after realizing what had occurred, she called police to report Diana missing immediately. According to information provided by her mother, it could be concluded that Diana Maria Carey Lopez Pinel did not suffer from any serious emotional or mental health issues. Although she experienced difficulties due to her parents' divorce, Diana's absence was unusually long-lasting, and this sparked serious concerns among police investigators, who began unraveling what had transpired leading up to her disappearance, and must uncover why Diana vanished without trace. According to reports, Diana sent her last messages via WhatsApp to a friend from Madrid and described a specific individual who was stalking and shouting strange phrases that scared the girl. These were Diana's last contact with the outside world, as she no longer responded, but her messages were still read by someone. The following day, police began retracing Diana's route back home. There, along the roadside, they discovered a black hairband similar to what Diana was wearing that evening. Unfortunately, it was all they found there, and no further proof existed for investigators to consider. Diana was unable to provide any useful information, and there were no CCTV cameras covering the final leg of her journey. The street in which Diana made her last stop was poorly lit and sparsely populated, featuring only garages and an outmoded Boomerang nightclub. Along this road were some witnesses claiming they saw Diana get out of a car containing 3 guys before moving onto another one that took her away from the port. These testimonies, however, could not be verified. Investigators considered 2 main versions of what had happened. The first suggested Diana may have been taken by someone she may know, while a second theory linked Diana's disappearance with possible attacks by maniacs. Diana's mother suggested an additional theory suggesting her daughter could have been taken away on a boat. Diana's friend and ex-partner reported meeting someone from Morocco who helped them buy hashish together. But this information only complicated their investigation further. One key point was the news report in the media about the discovery of Diana's clothing from that evening. However, her mother denied this information, stating no clothes had been found and her credit card and identification had been left in the house, thus demonstrating that Diana could not simply disappear on her own free will. All these circumstances further pointed toward this being not just random events or accidents, but something more sinister taking place behind these circumstances. However, the case still remained mysterious and could not be solved. Shortly after Diana disappeared, press reports detailed a recent dispute between Diana and her mother, at which point the media speculated that Diana may have experienced a nervous breakdown necessitating medical attention, as had occurred with Valeria, her younger sister. On September 1st, to avoid more litigation and conflict, custody rights of Diana's younger sister were transferred from mother to father as an attempt to avert further strife within the local community. With Diana gone, tension began mounting as her father left town with their daughter, and whispered whispers began that their family were hiding something important from public scrutiny. According to Diana's friends, running away was not unusual in Diana and Valeria's household. Indeed, quarrels between mother and daughters were commonplace. With this information available to the public, one question immediately arose: why was Diana so worried when she did not return when running away was so common among the sisters? On August 31st, Diana's parents failed to appear for an expected press interview regarding the investigation into Diana's disappearance and reported more details of it to El Mundo newspaper on September 11th. Instead, their lawyer explained they were emotionally distraught at the possibility that their daughter may never come home again. On this same date, El Mundo published an article providing insights into other aspects of family life within Diana's household. Information concerning Diana's April disappearance reportedly contradicted her mother's statements that she did not suffer from mental problems, as evidenced by information regarding her 3-day absence and failure by her mother to contact authorities about it. It further reported that when Diana left home for 3 days without telling anyone or turning off her phone when upset or disgruntled by something her mother did or said, the girl turned off her phone to avoid further conflict with her, and said that she no longer wanted to live with her. Letters written between Diana and Valeria also surfaced in the press, showing their severity of emotional issues. Valeria had even been hospitalized multiple times over the course of a year due to an overdose of prescription medications. At this point, given no progress with Diana Care's disappearance investigation, prosecutors launched another probe focusing on Valeria Lopez Panel family's youngest daughter Valeria's abuse by the Lopez Panel family. Meanwhile, Diana Care's disappearance investigation continued apace, with forensic experts seizing several items associated with Diana such as toothbrushes, combs, personal computers, diary entries and prescription drugs belonging to Diana from her roommates and housemates. Investigators conducted a detailed examination of Diana's belongings. Investigators then began questioning her acquaintances, including a young Moroccan man whom Diana had had an encounter. Unfortunately, none of these measures brought any results and further police searches remained fruitless. Although police conducted extensive searches near where Diana disappeared in mountains, forests, rivers, lakes near Tarragona, area 13 miles from where family was staying. 72 days after Diana K's disappearance, her case remained an enigma. Investigators' leads had yet to be confirmed, and they only discovered an item matching Diana's description as being part of their investigation. Her hairband and an identical cell pony that her father confirmed belonged to his daughter. 2 months after Diana had vanished, her Facebook profile suddenly reappeared online, and friends and relatives immediately informed the police and provided screenshots. Friends noted that reset password function had been utilized to avoid entering login details for her profile. Either Diana had forgotten her password, or someone was trying to gain entry to it through hacking attempts. Diana's phone was an integral piece in the case, yet it failed to shed light on her mysterious disappearance. On November 10, 2016, however, the driver of the very car where Diana had last been seen was finally identified. This individual had previously been detained on charges of human trafficking. Details about his involvement in Diana's disappearance had previously been kept hidden so as not to disrupt investigations. His wife claimed he was with her on that night, eliminating him as a potential suspect. However, on December 25, 2017, an incident took place that became pivotal to the investigation. One of the girls was attacked by a man demanding her phone and threatening her with a weapon. Screams for help came from nearby, and 2 passers-by immediately intervened to save the girl from an attempt by an individual to pull her into their car. The shocked victim immediately reported their experience to the police, providing details about both his attacker and license plate number. Within 24 hours, police arrested 41-year-old Jose Enrique Abene, known by many as Elo. As soon as police learned more, they soon recognized him as one of 3 drivers detained for suspected kidnapping back in 2016, but later released because they believed their wife's alibi. Police interrogated Jose Enrique and his wife again. Following this interview, his wife confessed to having previously lied, and on the night Diana vanished, Jose wasn't back home until 4 a.m. He eventually admitted he accidentally hit Diana on the road, was afraid to report it, so decided to dispose of the body himself, instead of going through with his plans of reporting her murder. However, later changed his version and confessed he kidnapped and killed Diana instead. This devastating revelation shed light on new details to the case and confirmed Diana K. Lopez Panel's disappearance as being due to violent crime. Her disappearance caused incredible heartache for both her loved ones and all of those following it, with nearly 500 days of investigation and media speculation only compounding their suffering. Assaulting Diana's parents only served to hinder and confuse the investigation, but, with persistent investigation and testimony from another victim, investigators were eventually able to collect all necessary evidence and track down Diana's perpetrator. Her loved ones will remember Diana as an outgoing young woman who unfortunately fell prey to an extreme criminal. Her story serves as a reminder that it's essential we stick together during times of turmoil, when fighting crime to end impunity and ensure safety for all citizens. Unfortunately, Diana's perpetrator did not confess right away as to where they had hidden her body. Eventually, her family and friends managed to say their final farewells, and give her a proper burial in January 2018. Jose was eventually sentenced to life with parole available after serving 35 years. Share your opinion with us in the comments and subscribe to the channel for more. In April 2016, in Fort Worth, Texas, a shocking and brutal murder startled even experienced investigators. Elizabeth Paula Arellano worked as a paramedic before falling victim to this vicious and senseless act. Prepare to be shocked as you discover who carried out Elizabeth's execution. Her death was so peculiar that the police initially suggested it might have been voluntary. However, this explanation didn't align with the testimony provided by accidental witnesses to this tragic scene. Investigation teams had to go the extra mile in their efforts to understand everything and bring justice against the individual who committed this extremely brutal crime. Unfortunately, given his conduct, his sentence appeared too lenient and unfair compared to many others. Elizabeth Paula Arellano was born on August 16, 1987 in Fort Worth, Texas, where she would live her short life. Elizabeth spent much of her childhood alongside Alessandra and Giovanna, whom she found to be her companions. Elizabeth's birth father left when she was still young, showing no interest in or contact with his daughter. Soon thereafter, her mother, Juanita, remarried Fidel, who eventually treated their children as his own. Elizabeth developed an extremely close bond with Fidel, who supported and assisted in every way possible in all family matters. The girls studied diligently at school and dreamed of one day becoming a doctor. While in high school, she met Rudolph Arellano, whom she soon fell in love with. Elizabeth chose a man almost 8 years older than herself, causing some embarrassment among her parents. Nonetheless, they did not interfere with the romance, as their son-in-law appeared serious and reliable enough for them not to intervene. At 16 years old, just out of school, Elizabeth legally married her lover. Elizabeth and James eventually had 4 children together, 3 sons and a daughter. However, Elizabeth did not intend to become a housewife, as she remembered her childhood dream of becoming a doctor, and she graduated from medical school to work as a paramedic while planning to pursue further education. The young woman was kind and devoutly raised in Christian traditions. She took her children regularly to church and instilled in them love and compassion for their neighbors. Family and friends recognized her as an attentive listener who was always willing to lend a helping hand. At first, their marriage seemed strong and blissful, but after 13 years, it began to unravel as Rudolph tried his hardest to control every aspect of her life, becoming increasingly inconsiderate over time. Eventually, their union disintegrated entirely as his jealousy of his young wife became uncontrollable. After yet another jealousy-fueled argument initiated by Rudolph, Elizabeth took her children and moved them back to her parents' house. Although Rudolph attempted reconciliation with Elizabeth, she had grown tired of his fits of anger and didn't want the children exposed daily to their scandalous arguments. She mustered enough courage to officially file for a divorce, and shortly thereafter, she mysteriously vanished without a trace. According to friends and family, she appeared in good spirits and decided, in order to distract herself from family problems and the impending divorce, to visit a nearby club after work with colleagues. On Friday evening, April 15, 2016, the 28-year-old mother went to a fun place with some friends. There, she danced and had fun but did not consume alcohol due to her plans to return in her own car, which she had used to arrive at the club. Elizabeth arrived home well past midnight on April 16th. Once she parked the car, she called her friend, with whom she had spent the evening at the club, to inform them that she had already reached home and that everything was okay. However, after hanging up the phone, she never entered the house. The next morning, Juanita became very distressed to find that Elizabeth had not returned home as planned. Although Juanita knew Elizabeth had planned on spending the evening with friends, she expected Elizabeth would have returned long ago, as her car had been parked outside their house, indicating her return from the club. Juanita approached Elizabeth's car, only to find it unlocked with its key still in the ignition. Inside were Elizabeth's purse and cell phone belongings, indicating that something horrible must have occurred. As soon as she noticed Elizabeth was missing, Juanita immediately notified the police and filed a missing person report. At first, the police believed they could quickly solve the case with hot leads, hoping Elizabeth might still be alive, as there was no blood or signs of struggle visible inside the car. However, that proved not to be the case, and their first priority became reconstructing every aspect of that evening and night for all possible witnesses who might help identify and interrogate. Friends and colleagues of the young woman who spent the evening before she disappeared were interviewed, providing details about when she left and returned home. Additionally, several calls and messages from Rudolph Arellano, who was trying to contact Elizabeth throughout that evening, were found on her cell phone, all without success, as Elizabeth never answered his calls or texts. Police officers visited Rudolph's home the evening and night prior to ascertain his whereabouts and activities. According to Rudolph, he had spoken with his ex-spouse that night, who assured him she would bring their children over for the weekend visitation. But after she stopped answering his calls, he believed she had changed her mind and abandoned him. Arellano offered up an unlikely alibi. According to him, he spent the evening sitting at a local bar before returning home at midnight and going straight to sleep. On Friday afternoon, Rudolph was confirmed by his friends and others to have been relaxing in the same establishment. However, no one knew where he went after that, and there was no one to verify his claim. So, the police were unwilling to exclude Mr. Arellano as a suspect due to his lack of an alibi, and his behavior raised further suspicions. At his ex-wife's funeral, Rudolph put on a show, weeping at her coffin and telling Elizabeth that he wanted her death as much as his own. Elizabeth believed in the sincerity of these statements. Furthermore, he actively assisted in creating a charitable foundation to raise money for her farewell ceremony. However, after the conclusion of this act, when police investigators called him in for questioning again, he looked and behaved completely differently, as though nothing bad had taken place compared to what Elizabeth had witnessed before at that point in time. After reviewing all the CCTV footage from the last several weeks, a thorough assessment was completed. Under Elizabeth's route, it was determined that a car of similar make and color to Rudolph's had driven away from her parents' house at 3 a.m., according to witness accounts. A neighbor also remembers seeing this same vehicle parked not far from where Elizabeth had been killed on a nearby bridge. Furthermore, investigators raised more questions when they obtained Rudolph's cell phone data for the night of the crime. On that night, Rudolph made multiple calls near Elizabeth's place of employment and then near his mother-in-law and father-in-law's homes, as well as sending his ex-wife several messages trying to find out when she would return. But none were returned by her. He followed her to Elizabeth's parents' home, where he decided to wait. Once the police had enough evidence against Rudolph, they arrested and brought him into the station for further questioning. One of the key witnesses in Elizabeth and Rudolph's case was their eldest son. When shown the rope that had been cut from Elizabeth's neck, he reported having seen it earlier at his father's house, recalling playing with it himself. Furthermore, the boy recognized pieces of concrete left lying around their garden after their fence had been replaced. Fragments from this concrete could even be found inside Rudolph's car trunk. The investigation revealed that the man waited for his ex-wife at her parents' home before abducting her and forcing her into his car, where he had prepared rope and concrete in the trunk for use during the massacre at a nearby bridge. He planned on going unnoticed while carrying out this act of violence. Rudolph Arellano was arrested 10 days after his ex-wife's body was recovered from a lake, but denied all involvement in her murder, claiming he had been at home on that particular night. Given the severity of Rudolph's actions, death could have been imminent until, after consulting with his lawyer, he decided to confess and cooperate with the investigation to lessen his sentence. Arellano did not plead guilty until January 2019 when he presented evidence in court detailing how he abducted and murdered Juanita, the mother of their 4 children. Juanita fainted during his testimony, while Alessandra and Giovanna called Arellano a monster. Rudolph himself did not express any regret for his crime or apologize to those affected by it. Rather, he spoke nonchalantly and coldly about it, without offering an explanation for his motivations or actions. For this crime, he was sentenced to life without parole. Elizabeth's family members considered this sentence rather mild, noting that they forgave Rudolph because they did not want their hearts to be consumed by hatred towards him. Elizabeth is now responsible for raising her children, as her parents and sisters are responsible for providing care. Share your opinion with us in the comments and subscribe to the channel for more. Detective Jeremy Ogden from the Hobart, Indiana Police Department gazed upon a manuscript that had kept him busy for months. It revealed an emotionally wrenching tale involving 53-year-old Christopher Reagan's tragic story. Born in Detroit, Michigan, and receiving his education there, Christopher decided at the age of 20 to join those willing to protect their country by enlisting as an active duty soldier. Upon being accepted into service with honor and devotion by standing guard over citizens' peace, he forever changed his destiny with his choice to join. Christopher was sent to a military base near Marquette. While there, fate brought Christopher together with Terry from Iron River. Their friendship developed over time after meeting as young people often do on city streets. Shy people may hesitate to say hello, but they eventually began walking together and became closer friends over time. They remained close for years since Christopher's service prevented any chance for more meaningful relationships to form between them. At one point, Chris decided to leave military service and move to Traverse City, located nearby but far from where his beloved lived. But this did not become an obstacle to their feelings. On the contrary, communication became even stronger between them. Christopher proposed to Terry that they start an extended romantic relationship, knowing each other for years but never violating any boundaries or ethical rules. She readily agreed, and their long-distance romance began shortly afterward. Soon enough, Christopher and Terry realized they shared many interests, from appreciating nature to preferring an organized lifestyle to yearning for peace. Iron River became their ideal location, and they decided to move together. Christopher moved in with Terry while finding employment at a factory producing parts for military ships. Soon enough, he even had subordinates who reported directly to him. Life was finally looking bright, but after 2 years, complications arose in their relationship, with passion slowly diminishing as Christopher and Terry failed to address its difficulties. It eventually became evident that this could not continue, and they took the difficult decision to part ways peacefully and remain friendly toward each other. Christopher realized he could no longer continue living at Terry's house, so he decided to rent his own place instead. As time progressed, Chris realized he wanted a change of scenery as well. Iron River seemed too small, so Chris began looking for more dynamic cities like Asheville in North Carolina. Fate presented Christopher with the chance to start over and embark on an entirely new chapter of life. Not only would Asheville provide him with job opportunities, but it would also offer picturesque, natural attractions, perfect conditions to launch himself into life anew. Christopher told Terry on October 14th that he had taken off work due to a doctor's appointment, suggesting they meet and go for a walk as they often did while living together. Christopher then proposed they meet later that afternoon and join her. Terry became worried when Christopher failed to contact her after October 15th and didn't return any calls or text messages from her girlfriend, Terry. Concerned for Christopher, Terry reached out to mutual friends, but they knew nothing. 10 days later, she filed a police report regarding Christopher's disappearance. Terry filed a report, but police quickly comforted her, assuring her that people often disappear for periods of time, only to return at some later point, sometimes even ending up somewhere new. Additionally, Terry revealed to police officers that Christopher had recently received a job offer in North Carolina. For them, this was another indicator that Christopher may have reached his new residence and begun living a completely different life after having cut all ties with the past. Investigators quickly launched an extensive investigation to disprove speculations. To do this, they identified Christopher's newly hired company and spoke to one of its employees to discover any information regarding Christopher. However, none could be obtained as Christopher hadn't shown up at work for over 10 days. Police speculated he might have been injured due to frequent trips outdoors alone. Search forces headed into nearby woods looking along routes Christopher had used. Specially trained dogs were deployed, yet no sign of Christopher was ever discovered. Terry suggested visiting Christopher's former apartment to ensure no accident had taken place, or perhaps find any traces that may give an idea as to his current whereabouts. Agreeing with her suggestion, investigators went directly to his former place of residence. They were shocked at what they found: items scattered across the floor and closet doors open. Their initial thought was likely Christopher was just being disorganized. However, Terry quickly dismissed this theory, asserting he wasn't as messy. Detectives began to suspect that all these circumstances might be linked to Rand's disappearance. So, after inspecting her home, it was decided to expand their search efforts and locate him on an even wider scale. Police searched carefully through the neighborhood before eventually discovering Reagan's car outside the city limits, about 8 miles from Iron River. Since it appeared unlikely he left it there intentionally, one door needed to be broken open for entry into it. At first, there was nothing suspicious in the vehicle's interior. On its seats were ordinary clothes typically found among locals: a hat, coat, and gloves. But one of the policemen noticed something peculiar on the front passenger seat: a small piece of yellow paper bearing an illustrated map describing an itinerary for travel. No specific addresses were indicated, only an itinerary, so they decided to follow it closely. Terry explained to Christopher that despite living in Iron River for years, he still hadn't learned the names of streets and roads, so he wrote down directions like turning at a bus stop or passing gas stations as guides for navigation. Terry noted that Christopher had indicated in his notes that this was his first trip to this location. Terry and her colleagues followed the route indicated on a piece of paper and stopped in front of a house listed in Christopher's notes before heading toward their final destination in a neighboring town. Investigators knocked on the door. They needed to establish who lived there and why Christopher had traveled this way. Jason Cochran was surprised when uniformed men appeared outside his home. Shortly afterward, his wife Kelly appeared, and they were informed by officers of Christopher Reagan's disappearance, that his abandoned car contained a piece of paper that pointed toward this address as part of their investigation. Kelly candidly revealed that she and Christopher worked at the same plant and were close. Although they hadn't spoken since mid-April, Kelly did manage to reconnect with Christopher in mid-June. Kelly Cran attempted to reach Chris via text messages between September and October, but received no reply. She assumed he had moved to North Carolina in search of employment, or possibly due to health concerns. Kelly also mentioned Christopher was having health problems and may have decided to start over somewhere new. When investigators found an address written down on a piece of paper found in Christopher's car, they became confused. Nonetheless, the couple remained willing to cooperate in any investigations that came their way. After brief questioning at Christopher's home, without finding what they needed, detectives decided to head out. Their next phase involved speaking with Christopher's co-workers at work before proceeding to interview workers and supervisors at his factory. One supervisor made mention of an affair between Christopher and Kelly Cochran, a rumor circulating among workers. After hearing this claim, investigators decided to re-interview both parties involved so as to gain clarity as to their true natures and establish exactly what had transpired between them. Kelly ultimately acknowledged her affair with Christopher, but could not tell him due to Jason being present. According to Kelly, their open relationship was fine, with Jason being aware of any such affairs on the side. However, discussing such sensitive topics might hurt his feelings and be painful for both parties involved. Christopher's co-workers refuted Kelly's statements, claiming Jason approved of their affair or there being any loose connections among their family, as she claimed. Jason followed Kelly into the police office, and their conversation revealed his opposition to Kelly's infidelity vehemently, thus making him an obvious suspect. However, due to a lack of evidence linking Jason with Christopher's disappearance, it became impossible for officers to conclude anything conclusively against Jason or Kelly. They had no choice but to release both from detention. The investigation continued for 5 months, without yielding any clear resolution of its mystery. On March 5, 2015, Hobart Police Department Detective Jeremy Ogden took on the case immediately and began actively working it. Ogden began by conducting a comprehensive analysis of Kelly Cochran and Jason Cochran's history, meeting in high school before moving in together post-graduation. Their personalities couldn't have been any more different. Kelly was open and loved talking, while Jason preferred listening more than starting conversations first. Despite these differences, Jason and Kelly decided to marry. Following their wedding, the two started their own company providing swimming pool maintenance services. It was modest, but provided them with a decent income. Most of Jason's pool maintenance duties fell upon his shoulders until overwork and strain took its toll. Jason began experiencing back problems and felt heavier every day. Eventually, Kelly took over running the business. When it became clear he couldn't continue running it himself, though this period proved challenging, she remained hopeful that Jason would soon recover and resume his duties once more. Kelly searched for ways to help Jason recover since medical drugs weren't providing enough relief. One day, she learned of a plant that offered hope for Jason's recovery. Unfortunately, its use in medical practice hadn't started yet and wasn't available everywhere they lived. It had even been banned in their state. To get this drug, they moved from Florida to Michigan's Iron River Township. Jason could visit his doctor and receive his prescription for this miracle plant. Suddenly, his agony would finally end. Early in 2014, a plant that specializes in manufacturing parts for U.S. warships, hired 34-year-old Kelly Cochran, who had moved with her husband Jason. Kelly made every effort to secure financial well-being for herself and Jason. Therefore, they accepted employment at Christopher Reagan's plant, where Kelly also worked. Over time, Christopher and Kelly discovered commonalities of conversation that helped foster their friendship. This proved particularly vital, as Christopher had recently experienced difficulty with Terry in his relationship. After reviewing all available evidence, the prosecutor made a strong argument to a judge in Michigan in support of obtaining a search warrant for Cochran's residence. After successfully receiving a ruling from the judge on March 5th, she sent investigators straight away on March 6th to locate Cochran's address. Searches were carried out of the Cochran home with extreme care, looking for any signs that Kelly and Jason may have played any part in Christopher's disappearance. Unfortunately, all efforts proved futile. The only significant discovery was a book written by Jason under a pseudonym from video gaming culture. Although its title may cause amusement, its content was truly disturbing. Jason detailed horrific murder scenes of everyone who had wronged him. One character matched up perfectly with Christopher as they read through this dark and violent work. Suspicion increased surrounding Jason. Perhaps his crimes weren't made up, but instead stemmed from actual incidents he had committed himself. With these concerns in mind, investigators decided 3 weeks later to conduct another search of the Cochran house, hoping to unearth the evidence missed during their previous search. When police officers drove up to their home, they noticed no vehicles present and that both the yard and driveway were empty, as no answer came when knocking at their door. No one answered the door when knocked. As soon as Kelly and Jason had left town after the initial search, they moved quickly into Indiana, prompting investigators to become concerned they might never find evidence they needed for months, especially DNA samples of suspects like Jason Cochran. Michigan police officers reached out to their Indiana counterparts, asking them to collect samples instead, prompting Indiana officers to head toward Cochran's new address to take DNA samples instead. Ready to assist their Michigan colleagues, Indiana officers then traveled directly to Cochran's new address, where DNA samples would be taken before heading directly toward Jason, Cochran's new address. The couple didn't object, seeing no legitimate basis to charge them with murder, nor evidence of Christopher Reagan. Meanwhile, investigation gradually disbanded, leaving little hope of solving his disappearance. Time passed until, on February 22, 2016, an alarming phone call arrived at Hobart Police Station from Kelly Cochran, who was clearly distressed over what had transpired. She attempted to explain that Jason wasn't breathing, but her emotions rendered it impossible for her to provide concrete details. Rescuers arrived quickly on the scene, where Kelly attempted to prevent doctors from treating Jason due to her extreme terror and panic. Soon enough, however, it became evident that Jason no longer required assistance. Sitting in a chair, with his face lit up like it had been from extreme overheating, doctors were forced to confirm his death and send his body for forensic examination, while Kelly was handed over to a police patrol who took her back home with relatives living nearby on her street. Investigators were determined to ascertain what had transpired, so they conducted a search of Cochran's new home and discovered evidence in the form of a syringe needle at the foot of the marital bed. After inspecting Jason's body, an investigator concluded that his death was due to illegal drug abuse. However, this report came as a shock for detectives. Jason had an excessive amount of illegal substances in his system. However, the results from forensic tests indicated something more disturbing. His death had been caused by strangulation, as evidenced by bruises on his neck and face. So Jason, who had been suspected of kidnapping Christopher Ryan himself, became himself the victim of crime. This revelation raised new questions and necessitated a thorough re-examination of evidence. Immediately thereafter, forensic specialists turned their focus onto Kelly Cochran, whom many suspected as being linked to both incidents. She became suspect not only for Christopher's disappearance, but also in her husband's murder. The investigation became even more complex. On February 23, 2016, Kelly Cochran was summoned to testify in Jason's murder case at the police station. Investigators directly interrogated her about her possible involvement in his death and whether she administered excessive doses of illegal drugs to him. Regardless of the lack of concrete evidence and pressure from investigators, this young woman did not confess to either the murder of Jason or the kidnapping of Christopher. Investigators were unable to find sufficient proof of Kelly's guilt and were unable to arrest him, leading Detective Jeremy Ogden on a trail that eventually brought him face-to-face with Walter Hammerman, one of Jason's closest allies. During this investigation process, Detective Ogden met up with Walter Hammerman. Walter immediately ran to the police upon hearing of Kelly's shocking story of Jason's tragic death from illegal drugs, emphasizing how close they were. Walter assured his partner that any changes would certainly have been communicated. Jason had been taking medicinal herbs with the sole aim of relieving his back pain for quite some time now, yet Walter noticed his friend had fallen into an unstable situation recently. In March last year, Jason revealed his concerns with him regarding travel arrangements to Indiana, due to Iron River police involvement in a disappearance case. All this had had a lasting, impactful impression upon Jason. Walter witnessed Kelly become severely depressed and attempted suicide, necessitating medical intervention and therapy. Walter noticed a distinct change in Kelly's behavior as he took more control over his life. Jason seemed on edge, while in the past, the boys could spend hours playing video games together. Now he would avoid parties whenever his wife returned from work. This information became crucial in understanding what was transpiring within the Cochran family. After learning that Jason had died by strangulation, Detective Ogden devised an intricate plan to force Kelly Cochran to reveal the truth regarding Christopher Ryan's fate. Walter, Jason's close companion and close ally, was chosen as bait, intended to lure Kelly into an incriminating trap and cause her to make mistakes that could potentially compromise Christopher Ryan. Walter accepted a difficult role within this investigation, while playing out this performance before Kelly Cochran. On March 12, 2016, Walter called Kelly while under surveillance by police officers with listening devices, intending to present her with a letter purporting to come from Jason that contained something important and urgent. Walter explained to Kelly that Jason gave this letter shortly before his death, with instructions not to open it and send it immediately to police should anything occur. This came as quite a shock, both to Walter and to those watching over their situation. Yet even with this development, detectives had no direct evidence against her husband's killing. Investigators conducted numerous interrogation sessions with Kelly in an attempt to extract the truth. She denied her guilt throughout. On April 26, 2016, however, it became evident that Kelly Cochran had managed to slip away from their scrutiny. It seemed a mockery of justice, and detectives immediately joined forces with police officers from Iron River and Hobart in launching a federal manhunt against Kelly Cochran. Walter Hammerman was both shocked and alarmed that Kelly hadn't yet been apprehended. He worried she may get away with this crime once more and later attack him in return. Her phone had also been disconnected as though she were playing a cat-and-mouse game with the police. Detective Jeremy Ogden managed to piece together, after 2 long and hectic days of trying, that Kelly Cochran had managed to avoid detection by fleeing to Kentucky's Wingo town, more than 6 hours away from Hobart. On April 28th, Kelly was located at her cousin's house by police officers who issued the same warning. As soon as they received this information, an arrest team quickly proceeded to the house, knowing Kelly could be dangerous and likely attempt to flee. They moved swiftly without warning, and Kelly was apprehended and taken into custody that afternoon. Later that same evening, Detective Ogden arrived in Wingo, where he resumed interviews with suspect, alongside investigators from Indiana and Michigan. Once I spoke with Kelly Cochran, everything became crystal clear. Christopher Rian and Kelly's relationship went deeper and further than anyone imagined. Kelly truly loved him and dreamed of leaving this cursed city together and starting a new life together. But everything changed on October 13, 2015, when Jason learned about her cheating. They began fighting, and Jason remembered their wedding night pact whereby anyone found out cheating would be required to kill their partner as punishment. Kelly asserted that she never intended to take their agreement seriously. It had always seemed more like a joke to her. Jason warned Kelly if she didn't keep her vow, threatening that he would carry it out himself if necessary. Although Kelly didn't wish for this responsibility, she nevertheless helped Jason commit a horrifying crime. On October 14, 2015, Christopher Rian traveled to Kelly Cochran's house, hoping to take full advantage of their first meeting. Rian wanted every moment to count, their encounter, and every memory he would create together with Cochran. Kelly took full advantage of his absence from home to offer him dinner and an intimate time together. All plans went according to plan. Their evening promised to be memorable. After dining together on the first floor of Kelly's house, according to Kelly, they moved up onto the second. But their solitude was abruptly interrupted when Jason burst in with a rifle in hand, panicked and terrified. Christopher quickly recognized he was trapped, while Jason took aim and fired one shot directly at Christopher's head without delay. Chris was mortally wounded by Jason's bullet and died instantly. Following this event, Jason instructed his accomplices to bring Christopher's body down into the basement, where they dismembered it with a hacksaw. Eventually, all his limbs and head had been severed from its torso. The perpetrators then placed Christopher's remains into several trash bags before disposing of them by dumping them in the woods near Crystal Falls Village. Christopher's car was moved away to avoid suspicion, while they thoroughly cleaned Christopher's house to erase evidence of crime. They had become accomplices in an awful crime. Kelly Cochran was open about her involvement in Jason Cochran's tragic death, saying the plan to commit the act came about after learning of Kelly having had an affair and Jason becoming jealous that Kelly had chosen someone else as his partner. According to Cochran, this idea of revenge came when Jason learned of Kelly having another lover and decided on taking drastic measures against Kelly in revenge for what had transpired between them. Kelly wanted revenge against Christopher for taking away their happiness together and feeling betrayed by Kelly's spouse. Kelly revealed how deeply in love with Christopher she was and felt that his absence had prevented them from living life fully. Kelly struggled to cope with both her loss and its accompanying pain on a daily basis. Kelly loathed Jason for forcing her into doing what he forced her into, realizing she couldn't continue living peacefully with it. An opportunity presented itself when Jason complained of backache on February 22, 2016. Kelly decided it would be time for action against Jason. Kelly convinced Jason to give her an overdose of medication. Unfortunately, however, its effects weren't instantaneous, and Kelly covered his mouth and nose with her hands to ensure suffocation occurred before squeezing his neck to make sure Jason was dead, thus leading to bruised body parts on him. Kelly Cochran provided testimony that assisted law enforcement authorities to identify where Christopher's remains were buried. On May 18, 2016, Detective Jeremy Ogden, along with investigators and canine team, went to a site near Crystal Falls Village. This rarely visited neighborhood had become the site of an astonishing mystery. A team of investigators set off a thorough search around Lake Erie's surrounding woods, penetrating between trees to ensure no spots had been missed. One of their canine dogs suddenly sensed an odor and led the officers toward it. Officers were following the dog closely expecting to discover something soon. Instead, it led them to an unassuming hill, covered with fallen leaves and branches. Upon clearing this area, investigators found objects including what looked to be human remains, unmistakably identifiable skulls. On closer examination, it was evident that Christopher Reagan had been murdered. A bullet hole attested to this. Investigators knew they had found Christopher's severed head. Additionally, there was evidence such as a .22 caliber bullet and broken gun found at the scene, as well as glasses belonging to Reagan that may have belonged to her. Dental records helped identify his remains, solving an investigation that had perplexed investigators for 2 years. Kelly Cochran was officially charged with murdering Christopher Reagan and Jason Cochran in April 2016. On February 13, 2017, Michigan State Court officially arraigned this 34-year-old individual in Michigan State Court. The prosecutor noted Kelly was significantly reduced her role by being behind both crimes. Christopher only saw Kelly as a casual companion. Kelly, however, genuinely loved Christopher and planned for their future together. Christopher's refusal of her romantic advances resulted in fury, and Kelly decided to kill him by fabricating a story of an alliance between herself and Christopher's brother-in-law. Kelly confessed in court, yet presented another version. As per her allegations, she had been subject to abuse at the hands of her jealous husband, who orchestrated this act of violence. On November 9th, he hid in their basement and caught their lovers off guard before seizing an opportunity and using it as an excuse to grab a weapon in a fit of anger and shoot Christopher. Jason suggested dismembering Christopher Reagan's body, and Kelly agreed by being threatened to kill Jason Cochran. When presented with this new version of events, however, the jury began questioning Kelly's guilt. After 3 hours of deliberation, they reached their verdict of premeditated murder of Christopher Reagan, resulting in life imprisonment without parole for Kelly and 65 years for Cochran. Kelly Cochran was taken directly from the courtroom and sent directly to Crown Point Correctional Facility in Ypsilanti, Michigan, where she is serving her sentence with only regrets regarding her personal life. Kelly stated in one phone interview, "I tried my best at doing what was expected, from school through college and marriage, but ultimately all my efforts went in vain. All I ever did was work, while my husband entertained himself with computer games." At prison, Kelly Cochran continues to reveal details of her crimes and claims she and Jason committed additional offenses. Christopher was just one of their many victims. Unfortunately, due to Kelly not disclosing additional crimes committed or victims she claims existed at this point in time, it's difficult for anyone to corroborate Kelly's statements. Her brother heard from Kelly that there may have been others, yet there is no concrete proof to back that up yet. Detective Jeremy Ogden from Hobart, Indiana Police Department is carefully scrutinizing every aspect in hope of uncovering clues or uncovering evidence pointing towards any additional crimes committed by either of Kelly or Jason Cochran. Hopefully, it can close another chapter in this twisted tale. Share your opinion with us in the comments and subscribe to the channel for more. Subscribe to the channel for more. Subscribe to the channel for more. Subscribe to the channel for more.